Everyone take a seat, please. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. Yeah. Good. We got a talkative bunch. Yeah. Okay. I know everybody likes to talk. Good evening. Welcome everybody to Elk Grove Unified School District Board of Education meeting. Today's meeting is being video recorded. We did have closed session at 6 o'clock today and announced the board met in closed session and no action was taken. Today's meeting is being video recorded and it'll be on the district's YouTube channel. Blue cards are available on the table outside of the boardroom to my right. Anyone wishing to address the board? If you wish to address the board, complete the card and hand it to the staff member to my right. And please indicate whether the matter is on the agenda or not on the agenda. We have a Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Florence Elementary School, I want to call on Vienna and Alexis Smith and the principal, Paul Cordero, and Mr. Perez will do the honors. Come forward to the podium here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let me get ready here. Okay. Florence Elementary School is honored to recognize Vienna and Alexis Smith as our educators or education partners. Vienna and Alexis are the parents of two current students, Sandra and Edward. And where are they? Studying? Okay. As well as future Florence Bear Marconi. Vienna is instrumental in bringing our parent community together. As president of our PTO, Vienna has brought much needed organization, leadership, and creativity to our parent organization. She is passionate about providing a well-rounded and fun school experience for all of our children. With Alexis' help, Vienna leads other parents in holding monthly events including movie night, pancakes with Santa, bingo nights, and Valentine dances. Vienna and Alexis constantly advocate for our students and teachers. In addition to ensuring that field trip funds are available for needy students, through their efforts, we are able to subsidize expensive trips for entire grade levels. Excellent. Florence Elementary is very fortunate and grateful to have these two dedicated and generous parents contributors. We are proud to honor Vienna and Alexis Smith as our educators or education partners this evening. Thank you very much. And I will give you my telephone number to call me. Okay.
Okay, everyone stand and remove your caps.
Ms. Smith has asked me to say it, so salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
Do the presentation now? We take the pictures now?
And this is Tony Perez, our board member. I think I know the answer.
And I don't know how I missed it in our discussions. One of the
Thank you. Let's give another nice round of applause here. Okay, we have our high school representative report. I want to call on Sheldon High School.
evening, Board President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Oblos. My name is Betty Tarafa, and with me today is
Nancy Lee.
we both are more than grateful to be representing Sheldon High School in front of so many who join us today.
We first would like to recognize our school's academic achievements. On September 13th, we had our first of 4 Renaissance barbecue in which 600 students participated, and we got to recognize our students who achieved a 0.5 GPA increase with the blue card, 3.0 GPA with the silver card, and 4.0 or higher with the gold card. The cards have extra credit or discounts in stores where our students can receive a discount on a purchase. On September 30th, we will also have our academic award ceremony in which we will recognize our high achieving students that achieved a 3.75 GPA during term 3 and 4 of last year.
To begin our first few weeks of this new school year, Sheldon High School had 2 Club Rush Days, where our school clubs such as Black Student Union, Key Club, and Asian Club can present, and even new clubs such as NEMA Club that raise mental awareness throughout our campus were able to showcase their club spirit and mottos during lunch by showcasing dance moves or having photo props and to gain and attract new members. This gave new freshmen a chance to see the variety of clubs on their new campus, ranging from athletics, community service, and even dance.
Our next event was our annual Senior Sunrise on August 23rd at 6 a.m. with more than 500 seniors showing up to watch the sunrise and enjoy a free breakfast that included donuts and fruit. It was a meaning and memorable way to start our senior year.
Additionally, we had homecoming week on the 3rd week of school. Our themes were around the world to showcase our diverse campus. These 2 weeks included 2 rallies, spirit days, float constructions, and a parade. And last but not least, a successful dance. With the 2 rallies, teachers made skits and announced our 14 seniors who won royalty, played games, and had members of the rallies kiss a beautiful goat and announce our outstanding senior awards. We also had our annual Powder Puff game, in which the freshmen and lady senior Huskies defeated the sophomores and junior 17-7. During Spirit Week, we spent hours creating backdrops for each Spirit Day, such as Tacky Tourist and Wacky Wednesday, to motivate our student body to dress up. Float Construction hosted 6 days in which our student body had gained community service hours. In the end, our senior class won first place, juniors took them second, freshmen came in third, and last but not least, sophomores came in fourth.
Transitioning from our homecoming festivities to some of our academy news, Sheldon Equitas Academy took 4 students selected as part of the Justice Anthony M. Kennedy Library and Learning Center's redesigned student team to participate in an architecture meeting for the Robert T. Matsu Federal Courthouse. Also, since today is Constitution Day, Sheldon's Equitas Academy partnered with the Aboda organization to put up presentations by judges and lawyers about the 7th Amendment right to trial by jury in civil cases and to go through a jury selection simulation.
This year, Sheldon High School senior project presentations will be Tuesday, April 28th of this year. We invite all members of the board to come to see our amazing seniors. If you're interested in coming, please email the coordinator, Ms. Mazafera, at cmazafera@egusd.net.
Lastly, our Sheldon Husky athletes have been working hard to be very successful. Our cross-country runners had competed in multiple meets and done very well, while our women's golf team is steadily improving and has posted remarkable scores throughout the first weeks of school. Our women's tennis and volleyball teams have also been very competitive and look to make a playoff push as the season continues. Our varsity football team has played well and currently has a record of 2-2.
Last but not least, we would like to give a really big thank you for your time. And we would like to give Forward's report later on throughout the year to update the board with positive things that happen on Sheldon campus. We encourage all to make kindness normal and hope that you live by the questions that we ask our own students, which is, what have you done for others today?
Thank you. Good report. Okay, Franklin High School.
Good evening, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. My name is Isaiah O, and I'm a junior from Franklin High School.
And I'm Vanessa Guan. I am a sophomore at Franklin High School. We are excited to share what Franklin has been doing in these first few months of the school year. Franklin seniors and juniors started their school year preparing themselves for post-secondary options by taking the August SAT on the 24th and the September ACT on the 14th. As the reality of college slowly approaches, the class of 2020 seniors have begun working on their college applications. In fact, approximately 75 junior and seniors students have recently sacrificed their late start Wednesday to attend a UC application workshop that our counseling staff presented on the 4th of September.
Our freshmen and sophomore students have been gradually easing themselves back into the school learning environment after their long summer break. Back to School Night was held early in the school year on August 29th during the second full week of school. At this event, parents and guardians had the opportunity to meet with their child's teachers for the upcoming school year. This week, we will start our 5th week of instruction, and our student body is focusing on their academic progress as they prepare for our midterm assessments. As of right now, students have been working hard to achieve good progress report grades.
Franklin High School student unity efforts include special exclusive events designed specifically for our freshman students to help them settle down into the high school experience. Even before school started, over 400 freshmen attended freshman orientation on August 5th. At this event, Link Crew leaders helped to make the transition into high school proceed as smoothly as possible. Our Link Crew leaders administered campus tours and fun icebreakers. In addition to freshman orientation, many students from the new class of 2023 also attended Link Crew Tailgate. Held on the same day right before Franklin's first home football game, freshmen had the opportunity to attend a game-filled freshman-only event where they could have fun and form new friendships with their class. Freshman class officer interviews and packets were available on the first full week of school, making sure that our Franklin freshmen have been quickly incorporated into the Franklin's ASB program. All freshman class officers were appointed at the end of the 3rd week of school.
School-wide unity efforts included another introductory week of Pride. On the first full week of school, all students followed a special bell schedule that allocated time for teachers to incorporate short lessons about the defining aspects of Franklin's Wildcat culture: preparation, respect, integrity, determination, and empathy. Our school also hosted, for the first time, a Welcome Back rally. Held exactly 1 week into school, students from all grade levels had the chance to cheer on Franklin's various performances and to participate in fun rally games. The rally was shown to be a success because it received an overall positive response. Additionally, today, Franklin held a #ICanHelp assembly. This assembly was where all present high school students learned about the use of social media in a positive rather than a negative manner.
Franklin High School Wildcat athletes have been competing energetically so far in the fall sports season. This fall has seen an increase in involvement athletically, as we currently have approximately 340 athletes competing on a fall sports team. As usual, cross country has been conditioning early since the beginning of summer break, and they have since been regularly competing in meets. Our water polo, volleyball, golf, and tennis teams have also started and have also been regularly practicing and competing against other schools. Additionally, our JV and varsity football teams have been playing every Friday, and our freshman team on Thursdays. Franklin has already had 2 home football games, both of which were very well attended by Franklin students, parents, and community members as a result in Franklin's victories.
As with most schools, the beginning of the school year has been an eventful and action-packed experience. Beginning on the first day of school, seniors arrived early to Senior Sunrise to enjoy their last first day of high school. On the same day, as well as the next, students took their ID pictures for the school year. A week later, as mentioned before, Franklin had their very first Welcome Back rally, and another week after that, Franklin held their Club Rush, where students, old and new alike, could join and explore one or more of the 50 charter clubs on campus during their lunch periods.
With homecoming coming up, all 4 classes have also been busying themselves with rally, parade, and dance preparation. The 2019-2020 Franklin High School homecoming theme is Once Upon a Time. The freshman class will represent Little Red Riding Hood, the sophomores Jack and the Beanstalk, the juniors the 3 Little Pigs, and the seniors Hansel and Gretel. Class officers from each class are already meeting daily with the respective class after school to prepare a skit for the rally and to construct a float for the parade.
Franklin's annual United performance was also held at Cosumnes Oaks High School last Thursday on September 12th. Attendees had the opportunity to watch performances by Franklin's very own fusion dance company, as well as performances by other talented dancers, singers, and musicians. President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos, thank you so much for your time and consideration this evening. Franklin has had a strong start to the 2019 to 2020 school year, and we can't wait to see what is still in store for the future. We hope you can attend any of our upcoming events, including our homecoming festivities. But until then, we look forward to reporting to you guys again. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Good report. I want to recognize the principals of these fine high schools, Chantel Albiani and Paula Duncan. Thank you. Student presenters, you may be excused. Do your homework. I want to call on Dave Riley. Mr. Riley, come up on new administrators, introductions.
Good evening, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, Ms. Avalos. As you can see from your attachment there, we've been busy hiring some new administrators. So I'm going to call up my colleagues, Dr. Bindi Graywall from Elementary Ed, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Ed, Craig Murray, Assistant Superintendent, Secondary, Sue Larson, Executive Director, Ed Services, and Mr. Doug Phillips, our Director of Special Education. They're going to help me introduce their respective new administrators, in either new to the district or promoted in the 2019-20 school year here. And we'll start with Dr. Bindi Graywall.
Yeah, we'll have the board go down.
Good evening, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. I have the honor of introducing to you 17 new administrators for the elementary division. Let's start with our new director in elementary, Janet Anderson. Janice's recent previous assignment was a principal at Beitzel Elementary. We have a new principal at Kennedy Elementary, Sandra Brown. Sandra was previously a vice principal at Irene West Elementary. Joining us next is Jason Campbell, principal at Beitzel Elementary. Jason was previously the interim principal at Costello Elementary. Next is our new vice principal at Irene West, Rebecca Costello. Rebecca was formerly a principal at Oak Grove Unified School District in San Jose. Our new preschool program specialist is Laura Crook. Laura was an academic program coordinator at Kirchgater Elementary. We have a new addition joining us from San Juan Unified. That's Catherine Denning, our vice principal at John Reith Elementary. Next is Cindy Doyle, our vice principal at John Earhart Elementary. We noticed Cindy's skills when she was a 5th grade teacher at Elk Grove Elementary. Our new principal at Costello Elementary is Megan Drown Jones. Megan was recently a vice principal at Beatty Elementary and Jackson Elementary. So recently a curriculum and instructional coach for English Learner Services, Michelle Fennell, is now the vice principal at Carroll Elementary. Jack Ferrara is our new principal at Carroll Elementary. He was also the vice principal at the same site. Joining us is our new vice principal at Isabel Jackson Elementary, Sharon Hamlin. Sharon's previous assignment was a curriculum and instructional coach for English Learner Services. We have a new principal at John Reith Elementary, Katie Hedrick. Katie was the interim vice principal at Reith Elementary and an academic program coordinator at Jackson Elementary. Our new vice principal at Zender Ranch is Sherelle Kilotin. Sherelle was recently an academic program coordinator at Charles Mack Elementary. Next, we have Molly Sangaling, our vice principal at Florin Elementary. Molly was a dean of culture and instruction at St. Hope Schools in Sacramento. Antonio Slagle is our new vice principal at Florin Elementary. She was previously a principal in River Delta Unified. Joining us all the way from Florida is Katie Van Housen, principal at Elliott Ranch Elementary. Katie was a principal in Florida. And last, but of course not least, is our new vice principal at Marion Mix Elementary, Eric Westberg. Eric was an assistant superintendent in Washington Unified School District.
And now for secondary education, our new administrators. We have 8 for you tonight, starting off with Chris Beischel. Oh, I'm sorry. Pictures? Okay. Wait. We're pausing. Sorry. I thought we were doing them all together. No, Chris is not there. Yeah. Thank you, Tony. good. Okay. And now for secondary education. We have 8 new administrators for you, starting off with Chris Beischel, Vice Principal of Elk Grove High School. Chris's previous assignment was Vice Principal at Mount Diablo High School in Mount Diablo Unified School District. Next up is Jennifer Hubbard. She's our Program Specialist for AVID in Secondary Education. Jennifer's previous assignment was as a counselor at Franklin High School. Our third candidate, or new administrator, is Mr. Juan Johnny Haragi as the principal of Cosumnes Oaks High School. Johnny came to us from Los Angeles Unified School District, where he was the principal of the Carson Academy of Medical Arts. Our next candidate is our homegrown Rudy Ortega, new principal at Florin High School. Rudy was previously a vice principal at Florin High School. Our next candidate is Toby Page. Toby is our new principal at Calvine High School. She was previously the vice principal at Florin High School. And our next candidate is Miss Laura Ricks, new principal, Monterey Trail High School. Laura was previously the vice principal at Monterey Trail High School. And our next candidate is Miss Nai Seichow. Nai is a vice principal program administrator at James Rudder Middle School. She was previously a 7th to 8th grade teacher of integrated science at Harriet Eddy Middle School. And the last secondary new administrator is Miss Srinka Smith. She's a vice principal at Sheldon High School, and her previous assignment was as a teacher in charge at Sheldon High School. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm excited to welcome some new administrators to the Education Services family. First up, we have Jennifer Avey, who is our new Director of Curriculum and Professional Learning. Woo! Jennifer was previously a director in the Pre-K 6 Education Division. Sorry, Bindi. Next, we have Mr. David Bird, our Director of Learning Support Services. Dave was the principal at Roseville High School in the Roseville Joint Union High School District, and previous to that, he was right here as principal at Monterey Trail High School. Welcome back, Dave. I'd like to introduce Ms. Sophia Fojas, who is our new Director of VAPA. Sophia comes to us as a program administrator with San Francisco Unified School District. And next we have the wonderful Lizette LeMay, who is our Community Partnerships Coordinator for our Family and Community Engagement Office. Lizette was a vice principal with Elk Grove previous to this position, and I am excited to also introduce to you Tara Mccartney, who is our program specialist in curriculum and professional learning, and she came right up the ranks as a CPL coach first. Welcome, Tara.
I have the honor of introducing 3 new program specialists for the Special Education Department. First individual is Brenna Dillman. She comes from Cotati-Roanoke Park Unified School District as an education specialist previously. Our next is Winnie Pbis. And she comes to us from Lodi Unified School District, again as an education specialist. And Simone Warsham. And she comes to us from Folsom Cordova Unified School District as a program specialist.
That's it?
Yeah. I didn't want to see all these people.
A good team moving forward. Okay, I'll call on Sue Larson on Pbis Coalition Recognition, and Mr. Fortuna will assist.
Good evening, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. I'm here to recognize the work that's been done in PBIS in this district. In early September, the California PBIS Coalition recognized 19 Elk Grove Unified School District elementary, middle, and high schools for their great efforts in PBIS implementation. And I would like to, at this time, introduce Mr. Don Ross and Ms. Lisa Vartanian, who will provide some details about the wonderful progress of our schools.
Good evening. So we're very happy to be here tonight to honor the principals and their team and, for their PBIS recognition. PBIS is a proactive approach to establishing behavioral supports and promoting social, cultural needs for all students at the school site so they can achieve social, emotional, and academic success. The California PBIS Coalition is dedicated to the implementation of PBIS in our state. It is their goal to recognize and celebrate the efforts of schools in supporting student success by acknowledging the commitment to implementing PBIS. And the Elk Grove Unified School District would like to acknowledge and celebrate the 19 schools who have achieved this recognition from the California PBIS Coalition. So in order to achieve recognition by the California PBIS Coalition, a school is rated in 7 areas of PBIS implementation. It's rated on its tiered fidelity inventory score and must receive a 70% or better, a reduction in major and minor office referrals, a reduction in suspensions, documentation in their action plan, evidence of impact, academic impact, evidence of advanced interventions, and evidence from classroom walkthrough data. So at this time, I would like to call up the school site principals and their teams, because we've asked their teams to join them, to be recognized for this outstanding accomplishment. And so we're going to start with the Silver Award because there's a silver, gold, and platinum levels that we're honoring tonight. So our Silver Award folks, I'll start with the principal for Arthur C. Butler and her team, Jody Boyle. Next, the principal for Raymond Case Elementary, John Santon, and his team. The principal for Cosumnes River Elementary School, Sheila Carruthers. Is Dave? Okay. Well, we'll recognize Elk Grove Elementary School was recognized as the Silver Award winner. Mr. Nevis couldn't make it tonight. And then representing Robert J. Fite Elementary School, Vice Principal Rob Aikman. And next, representing Roy Herberger Elementary School, Principal Jennifer Wilbank. And then representing Florence Markhofer Elementary School, Principal Gordon Blackwood. Okay. And then Principal Mike Golden could not make it tonight, but honored is Robert J. McGarvey Elementary School. Stop. Good. We'll take a pause for pictures. What's that? I don't know. All right, and then we'll pick up with Prairie Elementary School, Principal Laura Anderson and her team. Nice team representation.
Yeah, like it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Give a high five if you wave at me. That's a team.
Was that the gold level?
And next, representing David Reese Elementary School, Vice Principal Janet Vernand. And her team. And then Joseph Sims Elementary School, represented by Principal Robin Riley. And now for our middle school, Mark Benson representing Harriet Eddy Middle School and his team. Charles, Kim's here, though, right? Okay. And then representing Edward Harris Junior Middle School, Vice Principal Kim Wallace. Picture. There's two more in silver, so if you want to. Okay, we're going to move on. It's still in our silver category, but our high schools, Laguna Creek High School, Principal Doug Craig and his team. And then our last silver award winner, Monterey Trail High School with Principal Laura Ricks and her team. Keep going? That's on silver. Keep going, or? All right, we have three gold level recipients, and we'll start with Arnold Adriani, and Mark Vera. And next, Ellen Fikert, represented by Eric Murchison and his team. And then Catherine Albiani Middle School, represented by Bree Bahar and her team.
Lucky with Albion.
And then the highest level of achievement goes to a platinum level. And we're very honored tonight to have Aletha Donner here and their staff, represented by Michelle Jenkins and her team, all decked out. Go for the picture.
No, I said we wait here.
Okay, we'll call on Ms. Larson again for Character Education Month resolution.
Gee, thank you. I have 3 mothers on this board. Sorry. No, that's okay.
Good evening again.
I'm just saying, I get taken care of.
Tonight, we will be respectfully asking the board to adopt resolution number 9, which designates the month of October as Character Education Month in our schools. The State Board of Education also recognizes October 2019 as Character Education Month, and by passing of the resolution affirming Character Education Month, the board would support the original recommendation of our Civic Values and Ethics Education Action Team, supporting also our Elk Grove Unified School District's core values. So tonight, I respectfully ask you to approve Resolution 9.
Call for one. It's been moved and second to adopt Resolution 9. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Ms. Santi Pinkerton, the United Way campaign.
Good evening, Board President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. So tonight I have with me a couple of representatives from United Way. Paula Mumm is here as well, and also I have a report in terms of some of the goings-on before I ask you to approve resolution for United Way. They have a little bit of things to tell you. You have some brochures there as well about the United Way, and they'd like to let you know how the partnership has been working in the past year.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, President Madison, Superintendent Hoffman, Ms. Avalos, and distinguished members of the board. My name is Paula Mumm. I'm with United Way, and I'm pleased to confirm once again that United Way has a long and rich history of generous support from the Elk Grove Unified School District. We thank you for their partnership, which ensures the growth of all of our children, and it makes Elk Grove and the entire Sacramento region a better, stronger community for all families. I'd like to introduce Katie Horeb-Wohlers. She is our Literacy Program Coordinator at United Way, and she would like to share a few successes in the Elk Grove School District and how vital your commitment and participation both are.
Thank you so much. I'll try to keep it brief. I know it's late. We were in Charles Mack, Union House, Sierra Enterprise, as well as Anna Kirchgater last year with our Experience Corps program. This is a volunteer-based program where we serve kindergarten through 3rd grade students who are below grade level in their reading, and we help them catch up by the time they enter 4th grade. So we district-wide, or I should say program-wide, we are in 5 school districts, including Elk Grove, and across those programs, 61% of our students who are below grade level at the beginning of the year caught up by half a grade level. But in Elk Grove, they're doing even better. 74% of students caught up by half a grade level. And then program-wide across our 17 schools, 39% of students improved by a full grade level or more, or ended on grade level by the end of the year. But in Elk Grove, we're doing even better. It's 44% of students. And this is all thanks to the hard work of the students, all of the coordination with teachers and principals and school staff, after school staff, and everyone here at the district. So thank you so much for all of your partnership. Thank you.
I'd like to just close and let you know that we also have a partnership with the Aarp Foundation. And for every dollar that we raise for our literacy programs, that foundation will match that dollar for dollar. So we like to think of it as giving directly to our own students. We like to think of it as a little bit of free tutoring, if you will. And you do have in front of you our United Way brochure with contact information. Should you have any questions at all, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
So, as you know, the United Way is an organization dedicated to public service in the fields of education, health, rehabilitation, family, youth, and aged counseling, legal aid, and emergency assistance. The board is requested to approve the attached resolution, which proclaims the period of time between October 4th and October 31st, 2019, as the United Way campaign for the Elk Grove Unified School District.
I'll second.
Been moved and second by Ms. Sheriff Espinoza. And a motion to approve Resolution 14 proclaiming the period from October 4th through October 31st, 2019 as the United Way campaign. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, walk to school day. Ms. Chadwick.
Good evening, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. Nice to see you all again, and thank you for this opportunity to provide the annual update on our Safe Routes to School work. As we get the presentation loaded, thank you so much. Mr. Pierce? Okay, so as always, we start with our definition of safe routes to school, just to be grounded in the fact that we're working toward the well-being of our students and children. Many stakeholders are involved in this work, and we're going to talk more about that in the presentation tonight. And by encouraging them to walk and bicycle to school. So it's a recognition that the school day begins not just when students sit down in the classroom, their first classroom for the day, but on the route to school as well, and after the last bell. So our commitment to active transportation to school is grounded in its many benefits, from increasing student physical activity to decreasing traffic congestion around our school sites, improving students' readiness to learn, and also getting out into the neighborhood and actually being part of the community on the way to school and on the way home. This picture on this slide is actually from last year's Walk and Roll to School Day at Prairie Elementary. It was pretty powerful. We graciously were loaned some of the equipment from the Pedestrians Don't Have Armor campaign that was run by the Office of Traffic Safety. So pretty powerful thing to have a student wearing this Iron Man style piece of a car door to help his fellow students cross and families cross the street, just to drive home the point that, you know, pedestrians are vulnerable and drivers need to behave accordingly to safeguard their health and well-being. Safe Routes to School is based on the 6 E's, and these are 6 areas of focus. I'm going to propose one more tonight, but Walk to School Day falls under our encouragement E, but we do a lot in the other areas as well. So today I wanted to tell you more about the E's that we've been increasingly working on with our community partners, and that's under the engineering branch. I like to think about it also as E for an environment focus as well, so a more global approach. These are about the changes that, if we can institute them, they're almost seamless, almost automatic, so that they help increase the safety and the likelihood that parents will feel comfortable letting their kids walk and bike to school. So we've increased collaboration with Public Works and our traffic engineering partners in all of our jurisdictions. We're looking at long-term changes to the built environment, so taking feedback we get from schools and parents about what they'd like to see around the school site to help make it safer. And infrastructure and developing policies will remain in place as school administrations and parent populations change over time. One of those projects that I'm pretty excited about is the 15 is Fast Enough campaign. You may have heard about this in the city of Sacramento. It's part of their Vision Zero initiative to eliminate all traffic fatalities by 2027. So it's an ambitious commitment, but it's something that they're putting in place different strategies that should make our streets safer for walkers and bikers, and all of us, drivers too. So the project was initiated by the city to reduce speed limits in school zones from the standard 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour. This was based on an assembly bill passed in 2018 that gave some power to local jurisdictions. Previously, traffic engineering departments had to make a case based on the volume traveling on these streets. I've always, in my work since I've started this position, have been thinking, well, schools should have a special kind of bubble around them where they get special treatments, even if, say, there's not a huge volume of traffic outside of the arrival and dismissal hours of school. But that's basically what happened. They allowed local jurisdictions to decide they could reduce the speed limit around school sites and unqualified roadways. The initiative includes 115 schools, and 11 of them are within Elk Grove Unified. So we've been engaged with them to provide information and educational materials to educate law enforcement, and once the signs have gone up, which now they're all in place, law enforcement can do periodic checks to make sure that the drivers around the school site at critical times are adhering to the new law. And it does say when children are present, so just as some of the 25 mile per hour signs advocate for, it's during arrival, dismissal, and kind of a midday recess or kindergarten changeover. Through research, we know that the likelihood of pedestrian injury and fatality increases with every mile per hour increase in speed. So if you're a pedestrian hit by a car going 30 miles per hour, the likelihood of fatality is 40%. If you reduce that by just 10 miles per hour, your likelihood of fatality is only 5%. So reducing the speed limit to 15 miles per hour can have a measurable impact on the health of our students and our school communities. So I did mention South Sacramento. Those were the first signs to be installed of the whole initiative. And these are the schools that are affected, and I'll just let you read those. There's elementary and secondary schools that had the reduction around their school site. It's going to take a while for this to take effect, but we're also now exploring this with the city of Elk Grove. I'm working with the traffic engineer, Ryan Chapman, to see how feasible this would be to do and analyze our Elk Grove schools and reduce the speed limit as well. Other engineering and environmental projects, one that's been a long time in coming is near Prairie Elementary and Samuel Jackman Middle School. It's the installation of a pedestrian-activated rapid flashing beacon system. It cost about $100,000, and the federal government has given the city of Sacramento some money to install them, and we were able to advocate for this to be the very first one in this round of cycle of funding. So we're really excited about it. This is sort of gives you a visual. This is not it yet because it's just about to be constructed, but at the top is the intersection at Kentwall Drive and Valley High Drive, just at the south of Samuel Jackman Middle School. We get reports all the time of near misses, people getting hit there, people not being able to see pedestrians because of sun in their eyes as it's rising in the east. And then, unfortunately, there was a student who was hit, a Jackman Middle School student who was hit there last winter. She did not have any serious injury, but she did miss about a week of school, I'm told by the principal, due to forehead injury and swelling and eye swelling. She was hit, luckily not serious, but I think it was that incident and our advocacy with the city that caused them to put this at the top of the list of their priorities. So there will be a pedestrian-activated button with new signage, solar-powered, and they're also going to create, as this picture on the bottom shows, an island in the middle of the road that's a safe refuge for pedestrians should they not be able to make it all the way across. It is a rather wide street with 3 lanes. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. We also advocated for, in conjunction with the modernization projects at Union House Elementary, for new painting of crosswalks and actual installation of new crosswalks at Union House Elementary School. There's no stop sign currently at Deer Hill Drive and Deer Creek Drive. The stop sign was not warranted due to some of the geometry of the street when they studied it, but they did put a new crosswalk in for us with new signage. So this is the high visibility standard crosswalk. They're also going to be putting in a new crosswalk to the south of the school site, along with 2 new ADA ramps. So this is the kind of thing that will help make pedestrians more visible, will help around the school site regardless of what type of other programs we have in place. Oops. And then we're advocating for installation of a signalized crossing just to the southeast of Elizabeth Pinkerton Middle School and Cosumnes Oaks High School. That's at Cape Verde Drive and Whitelock Parkway. As you know, Whitelock Parkway was expanded to 4 lanes. That development happened very fast, and we started hearing parent concerns. Parents were calling me, calling the principals over there, saying they didn't feel safe having their kids walk and bike to school. So we got together, we brought some stakeholders together, and were able to come up with an interim measure, and they did put in crosswalks with a 4-way stop. The city is still waiting for funding, even though they've advocated for it, for a signal to go in there, hopefully this year. Another exciting thing is that the Elk Grove City Public Works has initiated a consultant contract to do a citywide systemic safety analysis of roadways. So the school district is a stakeholder, and I represent us on that committee to provide them with data and feedback from the schools. They're going to be looking at all of the roadways around our school sites and throughout the city to see what projects can they prioritize and what projects might be good candidates for grant funding. And finally, we're moving ahead with the non-infrastructure piece of the Elk Grove Florence Sidewalk Infill project. That is a joint grant that we have with the city of Elk Grove. They're going to be installing sidewalk to make it continuous on the eastern side of Elk Grove Florin, south of Elk Grove Boulevard. I'm starting the process right now of collecting the pre-evaluation data from the 3 schools you see listed there, from Markoffer, Joseph Kerr, and Elk Grove High School for that project. The installation of the sidewalk won't be until spring and summer coming up in this school year, and we will follow that with education and encouragement projects there. Oops. And we have our ongoing programs. We have Walk and Roll to School Day in October, which we'll talk about in a moment. Bike to School Day in May. We have fewer schools celebrating Bike to School Day, but we still have a core group of elementary schools that are celebrating. We do safety assemblies, especially if there's been an incident around a school site, and I usually do those in conjunction with law enforcement. Bike helmet education happens in many venues. We distribute free helmets and do bike helmet fitting at our bike rodeos. I also acquire free helmets for all of the students who win the attendance program at the end of the year in the elementary schools. So for perfect attendance, they get the free bike, and they also get a free helmet, and they also get lots of safety education with that. And then we also have our school helmet safety centers. 11 of our elementary schools actually are equipped through UC Davis to hand out helmets. We also are continuing with our quarterly Elk Grove School Traffic Safety Committee meetings. So that's a multi-stakeholder meeting that allows us to address concerns at school sites collaboratively and hopefully proactively. It's been very, very helpful. Some of these projects that I just talked to you about have come out of those meetings, and it's wonderful, and I'm trying to pursue those in all of our other jurisdictions as well. Operation Crosswalk, you might have heard about this. This is Elk Grove PD. We help to promote it. It happens twice a year now, in the fall and the spring. It's one day when officers come out to all of our 20 elementary sites and help cross kids in the morning and at dismissal to increase visibility of pedestrians and to have a positive impact on driver behavior. So it's a great community event for them, and it's also a good reminder for our parent drivers and other drivers around our school sites to watch out for pedestrians. And then we have school site requests. I've been working closely with John Earhart Elementary to put some changes in place and to get some more enforcement for some recent changes we've had with parking and signage and bus drop-offs. So those requests don't really ever go away. Traffic is an issue at all of our school sites, affecting the safety of walkers and bikers too. The website is up to date with lots of resources, including those for Walk and Roll to School Day that can be downloaded by parents or school staff hoping to increase their safe routes to school programming. Walk and Roll to School Day, there was an attachment with all of the activities going on at all of the school sites, all the elementary school sites, so we hope that you will join us. This year it is Wednesday, October 2nd, so it seems a little bit earlier. And now, starting with last year, we rebranded it as Walk and Roll, so we include biking, skateboarding, scooting, all of those good things. So we hope that you'll come out. There's some fun events. When I read through what all the schools have done, it's amazing that it's such a short event, but it's such a feel-good event, and it does tend to involve the larger community. So I think the kids look forward to it, as does the larger community. Thank you for this opportunity to update you and to ask for your support for resolution number 13.
Okay, thank you for your report. We have a motion for this?
I have some questions.
You got questions? Okay. Ms. Seale?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for the excellent report. I do want to report that, you know, the Traffic Safety Committee was one of the items that we discussed at the 2x2 with the City of Elk Grove, and just how positive that relationship and very collaborative and finding positive solutions. So I wanted to echo some of the comments that you made and just let you know that, you know, we had the meeting and it was definitely shared widely from both the city and the school district. As it relates to the 11 schools that are going to be impacted with the reduced speeds, will we be in a position to collect the data to see how it's working and how many, you know, like a reduced number of injuries and incidents that are occurring? Because I foresee down the road, I'm hoping that, you know, we follow suit.
Yes.
And it was also brought up actually at the 2x2 as well.
And I
for
know the
future.
city will be collecting data on that. I don't know exactly what their mechanism for doing that will be. There are many different systems that collect collision data, and the thing that is harder to capture are the near misses. So those are more anecdotal reports, and so that's where I think we could help with the school, because they're hearing about those, unfortunately, on a very frequent basis.
So like a survey or something like that, getting information?
Yes.
So one thing, you know, as a mother who drops off her senior son because he was too lazy to get a license, so I deal with the many traffic challenges on the daily basis. And I think in addition to all of the great work that we do, I feel as though one item that we need to keep emphasizing is for the parents, as it relates to distracted driving and speed. I've personally seen a lot of near misses, actual accidents, full spectrum. Today, on Whitelock, there was a student that, you know, was on a crosswalk and that was hit. And it's tragic. And I see not so much necessarily the actual accidents, I see those very regularly, but I see a lot of near misses, and that is frightening.
There is some new curriculum out for driver education, and so when we think of driver education, we think about educating people like your son to learn how to drive, but I think we also need driver education about how to watch out for pedestrians and bicyclists. So I know the 50 Corridor TMA, the Transportation Management Association, does have a curriculum, so we could look at that and see if there's any way we could bring pieces of that into our school communities.
And that's great for the students, but we as parents have to lead by example, and more often than not, I see parents on their gadgets.
Right.
And so if we're going to help reduce issues and actually, you know, what we intend to do with our safe routes to school, I think a key component is also the parent education.
I couldn't agree with you
constantly more. Because it's an ongoing problem. But other than that, I think this is an excellent report. I look forward to seeing some of the data, Mr. Perez, your favorite phrase, data sets, as it relates to those 11 school sites, and hopefully we can expand on that.
Hopefully we can report on that next year.
Thank you.
Mr. Perez?
Okay, thank you very much for the report. Let me tell you what I've been doing In my geographical area by the corner of Elsie and Power Inn, all the way to Gerber, in front, all the way to the district facilities, I mean, not the buses, stations, and the cafeteria, there's a lot of new truck drivers who are taking shortcuts right straight down Elsie and going through communities and residential areas. So I call the California Highway Patrol and my representative Supervisor Kennedy the issue that I have over there, and I showed them the truck routes in which they are abusing and the lack of those signs in those geographical areas. At one time there was actual signs up there, but I think they disappeared or they got knocked down or never replaced. So that's what's going on with Supervisor Kennedy and his staff in that geographical area. And also possibly doing some more infills of sidewalks. Now, were you responsible for the sidewalks on Stevenson right next to Anna Kirchgater?
So that came out of a 2011 walk audit that happened over there. And so it took 6 years before we actually were able to get the sidewalk in.
Correct.
And
I
it's
know that.
wonderful to have. What's interesting is when I went to the school site to talk about the new sidewalk,
Right.
what I heard back was all the other sidewalk we need.
Oh, yes.
So we do need more sidewalk, and often
Oh.
that's tied to the development of specific properties, unfortunately, so we see gaps.
Right, and so since that time, and that's been on my agenda for many years, 30 years, when my kids were going to school. In fact, that was one of the reasons why Anna Kirchgater picked up our kids at the park there, and that water park. And so because of the fact that at that time there was actual legislation or a California code that stated if there is no sidewalk, the districts will provide busing. And so right now, between Elsie and Stevenson, there is a patch there and that needs infill because the fact that when I see these kids walking through that area, biking through that area, it's very dangerous. You know, cars are within 3 feet, 2 feet. And right in that area, and kids want to walk and ride their bikes, you know, in that area. So you know, Kennedy is aware of that, and also I've talked to Kennedy about reducing traffic on the road to Costco. Right down that road, there's 2 roads that could be going to the back way to Costco and make less congestion in that geographical area. I mean, yeah.
It's interesting because when I've contacted the county before, they do have a master plan. So if you go online, you can see the master plans for these traffic improvements of all these different jurisdictions. So they're very aware of the gaps. It's a matter of when the funding is going to become available and then what gets prioritized. So unfortunately, like I was mentioning at Jackman and Prairie, when an incident happens that brings everything to the fore, sometimes that gets prioritized above other projects.
Right.
So the more information like you're bringing forward and we can provide the jurisdictions, the greater likelihood they'll address it.
So that leads me to my next question. On your website, you mentioned you have downloadable resources. Do you have the resources and contact numbers of our city councilman for City of Elk Grove, the City Council of Sacramento City, and county supervisors, because that's where things get done. You know, if these people in our community contact those individuals, the more contacts they get, they get the ball rolling. That's what happens, just like the old saying, the loudest gets the,
We don't currently have that up.
Okay.
That is a good suggestion.
Okay, and so also, yes, I'm speaking about telephone numbers and email numbers of those individuals and possible things like that. Some type of, or maybe next meetings they have that we could attend and
Right.
and lobby or whatever, consult with them. So also on actually you have school site requests for, you mentioned that you have school site requests for enforcement. Now, does that mean that what's going on right now, a lot of high school students and parents are driving their kids through communities in which they're speeding? In fact, the first day of school, I seen an individual parent, go around another, the car was going 20 miles an hour and she speeded around another car at 50 miles an hour. And, I was, I was really scared. So anyway, so within your resources, who do we contact to possibly get law enforcement out there visible during, peak times when people are coming and going to schools?
Right.
Because I know people's behaviors is a lot different when they see police officers just parked along the road or at a four-way stop, things like that. And so that's what I'm wondering about.
Law enforcement does go out to the school sites, they just can't be there all the time. So
Right.
often we do see wonderful behavior on the part of drivers when they see uniformed officers.
Right.
But that just isn't something that they can do all the time. So I know City of Elk Grove does have a schedule where they rotate at the
Good,
various
very
school
good.
sites.
Okay, so anyway, that was,
How much more?
Here.
do you have?
Can I interject for Tony there too? Our own people, with changes we've made, also, excuse me, they also patrol the elementary schools.
Right.
And the schools were not previously to these changes getting time. So to the extent that they're there both morning and afternoon now, that's helped in a lot of places. Again, it's that visibility that you're talking about that kind of encourages people to behave.
And they try to keep it positive. They try as much as possible not to ticket, but to do warnings and
yeah,
to discuss.
consulting, right.
Yes, but they have the power to ticket as well.
Right, I'm for that. And also, here's an idea that I've seen just recently about this issue. This woman got tired of watching these people just driving 50, 100 miles down the road, so she went out there with a hair dryer and dressed up in a uniform, impersonating the cop. Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying doing this, but she was so frustrated that she was out there, and it helped.
Mr. Perez, okay, in
Okay.
the sake of time, we have a
All right,
lot to
thank you.
cover tonight. Thank you. Any other?
Yeah. So first off, I just want to pass along some gratitude. One of the families that reached out with respect to Whitelock and the project that you guys did there contacted me initially, and I passed them along to you guys. And that parent actually had reached out to me a year before her son was going to have to cross Whitelock to attend Pinkerton. And within a year, you guys had worked with our partners in the city and actually solved the problem, which, for folks who don't have a lot of experience with interagency cooperation, they may not appreciate that a year is a really speedy response. But some of us do know that, so I really just want to commend you on your work in putting a solution in place so quickly there. And I just also wanted to ask, not just with respect to this event, but, I guess I have to stick to this event. So for this event, do you ever work in collaboration with family and community engagement? Do language barriers come up?
We have not done anything formal with family and community engagement, but they're aware of the event. And I think it's really school site by school site because we have so many, it's kind of decentralized. So I know that some of our materials are translated into different languages depending on what the needs are by the school, but they don't come, other than, I have some stickers and things like that, some encouragement things for the kids in Spanish that are available online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Fortuna?
Just a couple of quick ones, and some of these are just interest questions. How long have you worked for the district?
I've been here since February 2015, so almost 5 years.
And you've been in this role since that time?
I've been in this role, yes. Now I'm in this role half-time, so I was full-time, and since 2017 I've been half-time.
Well, you certainly have established partnerships with people, and that's to your credit, and certainly the schools and kids benefit. You had mentioned, and perhaps I missed it, but you had mentioned your relationship with Elk Grove PD and CHP and Sac City. Do you have a relationship with Rancho Cordova?
We do have a relationship with Rancho Cordova. We did a project with them around busing and allowing our buses to use the Anatolia Clubhouse as a staging area. So I got to know some people over there at the city. What's interesting is that our two schools in Rancho Cordova are probably our most heavily supported schools in the area of safe routes to school because the taxpayers over there pay into the 50 Corridor Transportation Management Association, which helps provide carpools to downtown Sacramento, which actually they give the PTOs over there a monthly stipend for safe routes to school activities. So those are two schools that are very well supported. So I tend to not spend quite as much time over there because of that strong partnership.
And you said this is the first year your position is half-time?
Yes.
By your choice?
Well, no, I was on a Caltrans grant that ended, and so my position went half-time, and I was very happy that the district chose to keep supporting the position. And the other half-time, I work doing communications and outreach for Measure M.
Oh, okay. Thank you. For the vote?
Excuse me. Yeah, just a few quick comments, and it relates to safety. Ms. Allen brought up at our high schools, Toby Johnson, Franklin, and we continue to have the congestion and the problems over there. I guess my question, I know the superintendent and I have had questions. I would like to see our safety department, our director of safety, to give us some updates through the year of what the SROs and along with the police force and helping improve the safety of some of the heavily congested schools. As Ms. Allen indicated, one of the high schools, somebody's getting hit. I think as one board member, I'd like to see that. We have a pretty big staff here, safety, and if we can be more proactive, I would like to see reports a couple of times a year, how they're interfacing with the high schools and with your department as well, too.
And if you ever have issues, a specific site issue, we can always bring it forward to the quarterly traffic safety committee meeting too. And our police services, safety and security does attend that meeting along with EGPD.
But we want to hear it here.
Yes.
That's what I've asked the superintendent for. Okay. Okay, we appreciate your report, and we get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second that Resolution 13 designating October 2nd, 2019 as Walk and Road to School Day. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Opposed?
you.
Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, student expulsion. I want to address the board. If anybody wants to address the board in closed session regarding student expulsion.
I had a one-on-one with a superintendent regarding this issue, and we're going to follow up on some issues. That's all I want to say.
Okay. I want to call for a motion to approve the request for student expulsion.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, request for return from student expulsion. Call for a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Approve the request for return from student expulsion. Okay, public comment.
We got to vote. Wait, you didn't call the vote on the second one.
Excuse me. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Public comment. Tara Martin.
Good afternoon.
It's
Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Tara Martin, and I wanted to come and put something out to you guys of what happened to my son just recently. So my son goes to Toby Johnson Middle School, and he was walking home from school with a group of kids. They were playing and horsing around, throwing things at each other. My son threw a pine cone and hit the little boy. The boy got mad. He decided that he wanted to fight my son. He started hitting him, punching him. My son ran because he can't fight. So he ran home. He ran to our neighborhood. The kid chased him through the street. At the end of it, there was another gentleman who basically saw and witnessed everything, but my son ended up striking the boy. The boy goes into the school. He tells the principal, hey, I got struck. They have a conversation with him. The next day, I get a phone call. They basically suspend my son, and they moved him for expulsion. Okay. I attempted to talk to Dolores Moore. She's the vice principal and the vice principal of my son. She was dismissive. She basically told me that my son was the aggressor and I need to just come up and pick him up. When I got to the school, my son was sitting in the office. I wanted to talk to someone. I did have an opportunity to talk to a vice principal who was very nice. His name was Mr. Crabtree. And I asked him, you know, how did we get here? What's going on? And he said, oh, the kids were just playing around. It was, you know, but because he hit him with his keychain, it's considered a weapon. I said, a weapon? Okay, I'm confused. I take my child home, long story short. My son's like, Mom, am I going to jail? I'm like, who told you that? They're telling me I'm going to jail. My son is traumatized. Ended up having to get a lawyer. I got a lawyer, came to the meeting. I had the displeasure of working with a Mr. Gorton who is dismissive, disrespectful, combative, and a few more other choice words. That being said, I am going to be working directly with Craig Murray. I've had the opportunity to work with him, and I appreciate that. But I wanted to bring to the attention that there was a lot of processes that didn't get followed. And since we had an eyewitness, the eyewitness actually came in. He's a minister, the chaplain of the police department, and actually a peace officer for the Hillgrove community. So with all of this information and even the reports that they had, this is where you moved, and you moved so quickly. This has to stop. This affects our children, Black children especially. You impact their ability to get loans for school. They could be turned down for grants.
Please
There's
wrap
a lot
up.
of things. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pryor?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Rowe for the HBCU College Fair that took place at Monterey Trail on Saturday. I had a scholar from our program get into 22 HBCUs, over $260,000 in scholarships. We had another scholar get into 5 HBCUs and the other into 3. And these college fairs, they're very important because our children have the opportunity to get into a school environment where they are celebrated, not just tolerated. When I was here the last time, we talked about belongingness. And that seems to be a theme that goes by the wayside when I have an opportunity to visit your schools. I have 5 complaints in the last week. 4 of them belong to you. You have paraprofessionals at Monterey Trail referring to children as bitch-ass niggers. You have teachers at Albiani. I saw that they got something for their Pbis. I have a complaint that said a teacher referred to a kid as an effing nigger. And when you talk about belongingness on these campuses, we have to be mindful of the people that we are putting into place to be the authority over our children. Attitude reflects leadership. So if you have teachers carrying on this type of foolishness, what do you expect your student body to do? We can't have that. We just cannot have that. And so I'm charging this district and your leaders in place to figure out how we're going to finally address that pink elephant that's sitting over there in the corner of the room called racism. What are we going to do to hold our staff accountable when they use this language towards children? What do we expect children to do with that? Do we expect them to just let it roll off of it? Because there's case law that says that when children are privy or experience racism, they tend to have violent outbursts. So when they respond violently, are we going to stop throwing the book at them? Are we going to have the police department come in and remove them? These are the things that we need to start having some really, really serious conversations about. And me and all my vertigo heaven that I'm experiencing, or hell, I came here to address you because these students need a champion. They need somebody who's going to come in here and tell you the truth. The truth is you are failing Black students, and you're using your teaching core to do it. And we want it to stop, and we expect it to stop now. And I'm going to keep coming back to address this particular issue.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the consent agenda action. Ms. Albiani.
I'd like to call for a motion to approve items 1 through 17, except for items 4 and 14 on the consent agenda, which were removed.
So moved.
It's been moved and second that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any bargaining units to come forward? None. Okay. Okay, I want to call on the Title I Task Force report from Ms. Larson and Mr. Byrd.
Good evening once again. Tonight, Mr. Byrd and I are going to present to you an update on the progress of our Title I Task Force. And before we do, we want to just start by being grounded in our learning system and to note that this work of the Title I Task Force is both influenced by the system, and we expect it to also influence our system to that end. We are focusing on achieving really all of the 4 strategic goals touch this work, and we're very mindful of the fact that as we do this work, our central goal is to produce young people that are emblematic of our graduate profile. And lastly, but not least, we are intentionally focusing on the pursuit of educational equity with this work. The first E in E4 is every student, and all means all for us. And in this work, in particular with Title I schools, it is very important for us to keep focusing on how equity influences our work. So tonight, you will hear an introduction about the Title I Task Force. You will be, you're familiar with the why, how, what format, so we're going to follow that as well. So we'll start with why. We're really going to be heavy on the why and the how. The what is still in progress, and you'll note that as we continue through our presentation. And the issue is simply this, that our Title I schools have exhibited consistent patterns of low achievement for many, many years. And in spite of all of our historical knowledge and our understanding of the challenges, as well as access to the resources that we do have, we've seen inconsistent growth. It's not that we haven't seen pockets of exciting things happen over the years. We've had schools working really hard. We've had lots of exciting and measurable outcomes that have been positive, but we're looking for systemic and consistent and sustainable change here with this. So our why, our central focus, and really our North Star on this is that if we want to have things turn out differently, we have to think differently and we have to act differently. And that's what the task force is actually about. So our how. We convened the first part of the Title I Task Force. We didn't know it was going to be in 2 phases, but it ended up, for the first work, we ended up renaming our task force Phase 1 Task Force because we decided we needed a Phase 2, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. This was back in 2018, and we used the DMM and convened a team to focus specifically on the research around Title I schools and turnaround schools, and also our own local data. So our charge was to become immersed in the research, to be very knowledgeable about a lot of the data that we have locally around Title I schools, not just student outcome data, and I'll share some of the other things that we looked at, and I believe that you received a copy of the report as well. And then for us to identify some gaps and potential causes of those gaps in this work. The continuing of the how, as I said, as we worked through that process, we realized we needed to add to the task force. So the second phase was adding practitioners. So the first task force was really focused with department directors, myself, Ms. Hayes. It was comprised of people who were very knowledgeable about Title I schools, many of whom were principals in Title I schools previous to being directors. But our second phase, we really realized that we needed people who are on the ground working in Title I schools currently and leading Title I schools. So that was why we decided to convene the phase 2 to continue the DMM process. Ultimately, the phase 2 group, we are asking them to continue the DMM, make recommendations for change, both in programmatic structures, school site programs and processes, and also district support, as well as to recommend metrics so we can measure the impact of those changes. And then eventually that will all go into what we are going to have as a multi-year strategic plan for Title I schools. So that's sort of our why, how, what at a glance. And I'm going to give you a few more details about the process for phase 1, and then Mr. Bird is going to brief you on the phase 2 process, which is happening right now, so that's really exciting work. So we started when we got our group together and we said, if we were perfect, what would we look like? What should we aspire to? And that was the deep dive into the research. We spent many months reading hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of stories about schools and districts across this country who were struggling with the same struggles that we've been struggling with, and they successfully turned those schools around. And as a result of combing through the research, what we found were a few areas that really rose to the top in terms of the areas of strength and the areas of really greatest influence in that positive change. So the first was that schools and districts that were successful, they had a focus on infrastructure and processes, which is just this systematic way of understanding their system and issues in the system so they could be addressed. An intentional focus on leadership development and support. Certainly lots of work with school culture and climate. And then lastly, high quality instruction that evokes students' interests, thinking, and learning in a meaningful way. So after we reviewed the research and we saw that these were the areas that we should be focusing on, then we went to our local data. And of course, we've been analyzing student outcome data for many, many, many years. And in addition, we were curious about a few other things. First of all, who are the students? What are their characteristics? And what other outcomes can we look at? So certainly things like SEL, culture, climate, the California Healthy Kids Survey. You saw that in the report that we gave you. We wanted to know about the teachers at Title I schools. How many of them are brand new teachers? How many of them have been there a long time? Do they come? Do they go? Where do they come from? Where do they go to if they do leave our Title I schools? Same with school administration. When we have our principals and our administrative teams at Title I schools, how long do they stay at those schools? How many of them are new administrators? How many of them are veteran administrators? We're very curious about that as well. And lastly, to coin a phrase that we laughed about a little bit in the Title I Task Force, the first part was follow the money. We wanted to know how are schools spending the money and what kinds of things are we purchasing and what kinds of outcomes are we getting with the money, because as you know, the Title I funds are a predominant part of how we support Title I schools. And as a result, we found that we had areas that we felt that we should examine for gaps. And when I say gaps, it doesn't mean that we have zero and we need more, but basically areas that we think we could dive into more and see if there's anything from small tweaks that we could do to improve or large initiatives where we could make certain areas better. So number one, we wanted to, we identified the need for and the development of and the continuing work around an explicit, well-articulated vision of effective instructional practice. And you know we've done some exciting work around the framework for high-quality instruction, so we've got some good beginnings there. Strategic support of school administrators, teachers, and staff. An intentional focus on school climate and culture, again, something we have been working on and continue to try to improve on and do some new thinking around with this task force. And then involvement of all stakeholders in the success of the school. These were areas that we felt that we should examine top to bottom thoroughly to ensure that we're doing everything we possibly can, and what else, really what else could be on the table for us to work in those areas. So, as I said, we finished that part of our work, and we decided right away we need principals at the table right now. We're ready for people who are doing the work on the ground. And so our first recommendation was, let's make the group bigger. But we also felt with the data that we did analyze, we could make 2 recommendations for action to begin immediately. And the first recommendation was that we are going to be requiring all of our staff paid from Title I funds that are working as academic intervention teachers or providing intervention to students at Title I schools to participate in district-led professional development led by our professionals from CPL on identifying how to identify students who need intervention, when to identify them, what are the best practices in providing that intervention, how do we monitor our progress, and when would we release them back to hopefully be very successful in the classroom. So that was one recommendation we felt very strongly about. The PD is being developed right now and will be starting later this fall. Secondly, we also found that many of our schools are using Title I funds to hire family liaisons or parent liaisons. Again, we felt that we could provide the service to all of those people as well and provide them ongoing district-led professional development on how to engage families, what kinds of activities could we be improving on with getting more family engagement and supporting our families more. So we stopped at those 2 because, again, we really wanted to have the principals at the table to continue the DMM process, to dig more into the data and to identify more causes so we could get to the point of identifying some high leverage actions for change. Next, I am going to pass the remote on to Mr. Bird, who's going to talk about phase 2.
Okay, thank you, Sue. I have to say I was super excited to come back to the Elk Grove Unified School District, and I think I was here about 48 hours before I had been handed this opportunity to lead the Title I task force and into phase 2. And Sue basically in about 48 hours explained everything she just explained to you, and it sounded really exciting. And so that's where I've been for the last 6 months is leading this initiative and adding the principles to it. And I think we've started some really good work. We've got a long way to go. We've got a lot of questions to answer. We've got a lot of data to look at, but we want to share with you what we've been up to since the summertime and on into what our plan is going to be for the remainder of this year. So the Title I task force has obviously grown. It's larger. We've added all of those principals, 14 in fact. We've got elementary school principals, middle school principals, and high school principals that are all principals of Title I schools. And we're working hard to examine kind of where we're at in these 4 areas and how we think we can get better. So I want you to look at that Title I task force gap statement for a minute. When I looked at this, it was overwhelming, and there's a lot there, but that's because this is a complicated problem. And what we did as a task force is we said, this isn't going to work unless we can unpack this and take it apart a little bit. And so we took it apart into these 4 different focus areas. There's obviously an emphasis on instructional practice, that high-quality instruction. And so we wanted to look at that separately. Support for administrators, teachers, and staff. What does that look like? How are we doing in that area? How can we get better in that area? Climate and culture. The research, as Sue said, is intense, and how important that is at schools that have a Title I program. And finally, that stakeholder engagement and all of the work that we're doing around that. So what we are doing is we're taking each of those individually, and we're just going deep into each one. And we're taking each of those through the decision-making model. We started by looking at data in each of these areas. We're trying to figure out where we are and where we want to get to. We're trying to figure out what's causing us at schools that have a Title I program to not be able to achieve the same results as schools that don't have a Title I program. And ultimately, that fourth step there, figuring out what to do about that, making some recommendations about how we can think differently and act differently. We have encouraged our principals and the other people that are on the Title I task force. All options are on the table. Unless you're really going to be willing to put the problems out there and be honest with them and then figure out and think creatively about solutions for those, we're not going to get anywhere. So that's what it's going to look like so far through the summertime and on into the remainder of the year. In August, over the summertime, we started to establish just a logic model of where we're at in each of these 4 areas. And in August, we dove into climate and culture. And we looked at climate and culture at schools that have a Title I program and tried to examine exactly what's going on there and how we can get better and how we can be more efficient with our resources in that area. September, the month we're in right now, our theme is Stakeholder Engagement, and we're really focusing on that in Title I schools and asking what is it that we do and how can we get better at it, and obviously on throughout the remainder of the year. This is a logic model for that work we did in August with climate and culture. I share this with you because it looks like there's a lot there, and it's because we're doing a lot. This came from all of the administrators at Title I schools. We asked them, what is it you put into climate and culture? What is it that you expect to get out of that? What are your outputs? What are you trying to accomplish with what you put into it? What are your ultimate outcomes that you're trying to achieve for students? And this is what we came up with. And I think it signals how complex this is and how much information this is and how detailed the work is that's going on at some of these schools. And when you consider that's just one of 4 areas, you can see the complexity that's happening in our schools that have a Title I program. So the first thing we do every time we get together is we look at data. And this starts really with not just student performance data. If there's one thing that research says is a mistake, it's when you just look at how students are performing. There's a whole nother data set that you need to look at, and it's perception data. And this is where all of the surveys that the Elk Grove Unified School District is doing of parents, of students, and of staff members, all of those stakeholders at schools are really important. And so we're trying to dig into that data and figure out exactly what our performance level is right now for school climate and school culture. We did a gap analysis of that. We have done something that I have not seen in my time in Elk Grove. We get a lot of data disaggregated in a lot of different ways, different ethnic groups. We often do low income versus non-low income, but we rarely do data from schools that have a Title I program versus schools that don't. And so we've asked our research and evaluation department to provide us data that compares the schools that have a Title I program to the schools that don't in these areas, and that's been somewhat revealing as we've looked at these different areas and as we've discussed climate and culture. That got us to this point where we felt like we could ask the question, so what's causing the gap in climate and culture? And in August, when we did that with 14 principals in the room and asked them to use their various expertise, what we surfaced were some of these ideas. And so these are preliminary. These are just where we're initially at when we look at climate and culture. What's causing the gap for schools that have a Title I program of where they are and where they want to be? One of those things is time. Time is a constant issue, I think, when you're managing a school, leading a school, and running a school. And so our principals want to figure out how to find time to train all of their staff and all of these initiatives like Pbis, restorative practices, and trauma-informed care, and the other things we're doing in climate and culture. We talked about fidelity. Leaders of schools will tell you they have varying degrees of fidelity at their site from all of their staff members to the things that they've been trained in. And so getting everybody to be on the same page and everybody to have those same expectations in all classes is a really important part of that. We talked about how there's an interesting disconnect in the perception data between how staff members at schools with a Title I program think they're doing in terms of supporting student needs and how students view that. Most of that kind of surfaces, as you would expect, at the high school level, where students are a little more informed and a little more opinionated, and they have different perceptions at the staff versus the students and how they're doing. It doesn't mean one's right. It doesn't mean one's wrong. It doesn't mean one's got it correct and one doesn't. It means this disconnect is an interesting thing for us to explore a little bit and figure out how we could get students and staff to see the support levels in the same way. This idea, we weren't sure what to call it. We've called it right now job satisfaction. There is a high level of job satisfaction if you are a teacher, an administrator, a staff member at a Title I school. They really enjoy the challenge and they really enjoy the work. And they're highly satisfied with their effort, but they also see themselves challenged and exhausted at times with trying to support and work with the students and families that are affected by poverty, and it can be overwhelming at times. And so they've talked a lot about wanting to keep their staff members there and not leave, wanting to keep leadership at the site and not leave, and maintain some consistency. And so that's an area that we're exploring as we look at these gaps. So those are just some of the causes in the climate and culture gap that we've started to look at. We also looked at things that I kind of moved over into a different category that are certainly connected into climate and culture, but we think are connected in general to being a school that has a Title I program. And this idea of autonomy has come up. There's a lot of leaders at schools that will tell you, I have a lot of autonomy, I have a lot of control, I have a lot of choice, and that's not always the best thing. I'm frequently trying to problem solve on my own through trial and error. I want to work more collaboratively with other administrators at other schools and find out what they've done that's successful. I want to work with the district in terms of maybe a little less autonomy and a little more consistency with how we approach some of these problems. And so that's been an interesting dynamic to explore, I think, with our leaders at sites. And as a former principal at a school with the Title I program in 2 different places in 2 different districts, I can tell you I've felt that before. You feel like you're on an island a little bit, and you're desperately wanting to work with other people on solving some of these problems collectively. Focus and volume are very connected. Principals at Title I schools will tell you they are managing a ton of really positive initiatives that are coming to sites. If you go back to that logic model, you can see all of that work, all of those initiatives. But trying to balance all of that and trying to focus on all of that volume is a challenge for them. And so what I think they're asking for and starting to question is getting a plan for themselves that would take them through all of these initiatives over a longer period of time. And I think that's one of the places that our Title I task force can go. And then finally, budget. I think, as Sue mentioned, the funding and the money part of Title I is always going to be a question. It's really a tricky chemistry problem of how much and where do you put it, and how do you leverage it. They've talked a lot about, we work really hard in this district to provide an equal base layer of funding for all schools to align with the central vision. And then with our Title I schools, we say, here's some extra money to fill in those gaps. And trying to figure out how much of that extra money and where to put it is a big question when it comes to the budget. So we're sharing those because those are some of the examples of things that our Title I task force with principals on it are surfacing. Where we're not at yet is the $1 million question, and that's the 4th step in the decision-making model, and that's, well, what do we do about it? And so our hope when we meet with you again is to be able to make some suggestions about the design and development, not just in school climate and culture, but by the time we get there, we will have explored all 4 of those areas. Lastly, I'll share with you that we're excited about a partnership that our district has entered with the Educational Advisory Board. Educational Advisory Board is a group of researchers that are out there providing the answers to many of these questions. The Educational Advisory Board, we started this relationship in the summertime, and they've already provided us with some of their pre-prepared research for Title I schools and Title I communities in things like climate and culture, stakeholder engagement, some tried and true research-based suggestions to try and solve this. And so we're looking forward to going through that over the next 6 months and pulling out some of the new ideas that we think would be applicable to the Elk Grove Unified School District.
Thanks, Dave. He was telling the truth. He landed in Elk Grove. We were like, okay, federal program monitoring right now. He's like, great, let's do it. And then I'm like, Title I task force. He's like, I'm on it. It's awesome. Let's go. He was very enthusiastic, and I appreciate working with Dave. So for now, in summary, you know, we believe that we can improve outcomes for kids and families at Title I schools. We believe it with all of our heart, not just here at the district office, but with our practitioners as well. As Dave said, we've got people who put their hearts and souls into this work, that love the families and love the kids. And we know that using the approach that we're using, centering it on research and understanding best practices and not blowing with the wind or finding shiny, fun new things, but really sticking to some basics that we know that are enduring through many years of research, including leaders, including teachers, including families. We know that that's important. We do it. We want to continue to do it and find better ways to do that as well. Certainly adhering to the DMM and to what we understand as improvement science and focusing on that process and with fidelity, because we know that that's something that will bear fruit for us as well. And really just keeping all of our stakeholders at the center of our communication and our data. And it's not surprising to anyone that this is a challenge in Elk Grove Unified, because it's a challenge in our county, our state, and our country. And supporting students and families who are experiencing the mitigating circumstances of resource inequality, of the myriad of issues that are facing our families now, that's not unique. But what really is unique about Elk Grove Unified and what we're doing now is, number one, the process that we're using with the DMM. You all know that when we talk about the work that we do in improvement science, when we talk about the work that we do with understanding inputs and outputs and outcomes and the relationship with those, that makes us pretty special and unique, and we're proud of that, and we're adhering to that. And most important, what makes us unique is our people. The people that are tasked with doing this work, the people that are doing the work at the schools, and our students and our families. We believe that we are special here in Elk Grove, and that really gives us the feeling that we can proceed with this work with clarity and with confidence, and really with a strong sense of understanding what's possible in the future. So thank you, and we will be happy to address any questions that you all have tonight.
Okay, well, we're happy that Mr. Byrd is back as well, too. We appreciate that. Okay, Ms. Singh-Allen?
Yes, thank you. Excellent presentation. A tall order here. And I appreciate that, you know, in order to fix something, we have to recognize that we have a problem with our Title I schools. So I really appreciate the sincere focus and really thinking outside the box. I want to pay close attention to, Mr. Byrd, you mentioned the Educational Advisory Board. I think that's wonderful. We need more minds that aren't status quo to our district, because if, you know, we're not going to grow or learn if it's the same people working on all of these different initiatives that we've put forth. So I think that that's a big, big step. Are we looking at other schools or school districts that have moved that needle significantly? Is that something maybe the educational advisors are recommending, or something that you're looking at?
Through the research, yes. We started with that, and we're continuing with that. So as new schools and new districts and new areas pop up in the research, then we're able to access the information in terms of what they've done. And then for people, you know, we have in the past, and we continue to reach out to other districts to actually have contact with a real person for places that we're interested in learning more about.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine the farther along we go into this initiative, and measured by our success, that this whole maybe will be a template for other schools. So right now, where we may be looking at, you know, what's working and not working in other schools and school districts, at least within our region, I know that it's a major issue for all school districts, is to improve outcomes for students in Title I schools. It's been there, you know, from as far as I can remember in public education. So it's always the hardest part of being a school board member is, you know, we do all of this, a lot of great work, we have great staff, but it's so always challenging to see that, you know, you don't see those improvements in our most neediest schools. So I just want to recognize and thank all of you for thinking outside of the box and really focusing on your intentional focus and looking at some of those systemic issues. I think that intentional focus is very important. I don't really have any other questions. Again, I like the status quo, not the status quo, the Educational Advisory Board. I think that's going to be improvement over the status quo mindset. Any other comments? I think, Mr. Bird, you answered some of my questions, so I'm not going to ask those again. It's a great presentation. I'm really looking forward to that decision-making model moving in our favor and seeing those improved outcomes. And it's going to take a lot of those courageous conversations, because some of those answers are not going to be pretty. But to really solve something, you have to really dissect it. And what can we do to improve students? That's why I'm here. I want to help kids. That's why you're here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal?
So thank you for your presentation. I'm always excited when I get to kind of relate back to my graduate program, the Doctorate in Educational Leadership, because we were able to study a lot of these theories. And for me, being in a classroom setting myself and learning it, now it's getting put into practice by our district, which is so awesome to see. So that's why when I always say wear my researcher hat, it's nice to refer back, because even breaking down terms such as like the gap analysis and looking at performance-based, looking at where we are now and where we want to be, I think breaking even that term down and understanding that really relates back to a lot of the language that we see in research and what's proven to help assist and help improve outcomes. So I'm excited to see the data that will be collected once we go back and really thoroughly vet and analyze some programs that are working at specific Title I schools and what they're doing to see improvement in their student outcomes and ways that we can adjust that and maybe implement them across the district, for example. I'm also excited to see that there is the advisory, committee made up of different staff, principals as well, because everybody's a stakeholder in this, right? When we're talking about outcomes, how can everybody as a stakeholder help improve an individual student and relate to the family? And I find it very interesting too, because the comment you made earlier resonated with me, right? Because sometimes when you're at the Title I schools as a principal, you may feel alone, and how critical and vital is that communication and the exchange of communication to occur between each other who are working at these school sites is very important and instrumental and significant. You can learn a lot from colleagues and just brainstorming different ideas. The data tells one picture, right? But then to get other stories from other leaders who are leading by example, I think are really important, and that's what brings that foundational change down the road. So I'm excited to see a lot of that and seeing some transformation that can happen within our school sites, and hopefully then when we go back and re-examine data and student outcomes and their achievement levels, hopefully we will see an increase in that, of course, right? That's the goal of this, because now we can say X, Y, and Z, this is the cause and hopefully the effect, and this is what we can do now to implement into action to make more suggestions. So I'm very excited to see that in the future as well. So thank you for the presentation.
Mr. Perez? I'll try to.
I've been in education all my life, well, half my life, because I did health services. But I think I'm seeing the same thing. We're trying the same thing we did when my students were at Anna Kirchgate or Rudder Middle School, Florin High School. But it's a different terminology and a different process of delivering the curriculum of study to our students of low income, poverty. And yeah, I know you have good intentions, but this data has been there. I have researched all this. I have all the research. Here's the issue I have. Not only our school district, even the state of California. It's just, like you said, it's a statewide issue. It's poverty. The bottom line is poverty. And you mentioned that in your report. When kids come to schools, there's poverty, there's cultural linguistic issues. And how you do that? How do you, how you deal with it? I've seen model programs downtown Sacramento, where kids throughout our region are within a 10-mile region, go to a charter school, and they have perfect outcomes, bilingual, bicultural, and from upper middle class to lower middle class students. So there's models out there. It's just a matter of implementing the programs. And the data sets. Today I was on the California Department of Education data reporting office of our district and looking at all our Title I programs. They're there. They've been there. They have a trend study. We had a trend study when Dr. Ladd was here. He was given to us monthly, and now you want to do another one? That we had schools in my district, Area 1, 5 years on level 5 school improvement programs. What's happened to that data? We already know that the poverty, the gap exists, and we were working through a variety of other 40 plus categorical programs. Now we got LCFF, LCAP, and now we got Title I. And then I see the LCAP plans, and we're putting a Title I into the LCAP plans. But I was wondering, what happened to the supplemental? What happened? I see the supplemental and concentration money is there, but I don't see no base monies. So what happened to the base monies in those things, in those reports? So, I am disgusted. Not within our district. I'm disgusted with, prior superintendent and the legislators, and that's where I'm at in my life and sitting on this board. I tell you the truth. But I will not give up. That's what I will not give up on our students, because it takes time. I understand people tell me it takes time to sit on the board. So I think you're going in the right direction. It's just a matter of putting more money. And going to these schools, and I see changes in our staffing, but I think the big issue is staffing. You got to get people of color in our classrooms. And I told that to our superintendent, who are from the poverty areas, who've gone through our school district, who have gone through the universities and got their PhDs here. They know the system. It's a matter of sitting up here and putting that input. Over here's another one who's sitting on our California School Board Association, and getting those people together and coming back from our California School Board Association and those blue ribbon, what were those reports they get for the outstanding schools? Was it what? Golden Bell Awards. We've seen it. Again, they're out there. We've seen them. And I want to bring them to our district. It's a matter of changes. Just a little change that I was trying to get in Rudder, the curriculum of study. It only took me $500 to support somebody to get a national award or a statewide award and going national too. But we need change, and sometimes change, again, doesn't happen as fast as it can. But, the data is there. I know for a fact, I think, Mr. Madison knows for a fact that his area, we are all Title I. But yet, he's been there X amount of years. And I've been in my community 35 years, but yet I don't see our educational system change that much. It's sad. It seems like we have a template that works for another group of people, but not a template that will work for low-income people. And that's why I'm trying to get to you. These students come to our schools with, again, we're doing on the mental health issue, but another issue is mental health, nutrition. We have to have those resources in our schools, and schools need to change to have those resources in the schools. And that change, like I said before, community health clinics, school clinics. Again, I'm going to stress that. We just had an incident with one of our students in the high school. It was a mental health case, and he got kicked out. So, again, on this track. I think you're on the track, but there's schools out there that are doing really good under the circumstances, and our staff is doing good with their resources, but yet, I'm going to say that we need more resources for our students. That's, computers for IT and STEM. We're doing that. We just approved almost $1 million for computer costs for the Title I schools. I support that. Yes. Can they take those books home and study with those books? That's a big question. Can they do those? Can each one of those kids get to use that book and take it home and do their homework? Be computer literate in that, using Microsoft Word, using that new story writing, story mapping program. That's what I'm concerned about. The new technology and new things. Common Core,
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah, Mr. President, we're sticking to this now. We don't want
Okay,
to
okay.
bring up Common Core. Right.
So anyway, I understand that our systems have gone through a variety of changes, but for the good, but yet I wonder, but I think we're still getting the same results. So I want you to be aware of that and where my head is at and my frustrations are at, dealing with, trying to get 4 votes to do something, and all it takes is 4 votes, And so, okay, let me get back to over here. You mentioned that we have an equal base funding. That's an issue I have with our school district, an equal base funding. If we have a problem of, like I said, I did not like the way they distribute LCAP monies. They used it on staff, what do you call it?
There is no
raises.
they. There is no they. There's us.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
What?
us.
Yeah.
That's we.
No.
We did that. You
No,
voted.
no. The
We did it.
superintendent changed the policy, and I could bring the policy, the one paper,
Superintendent, are you talking about?
Tom Turkison,
Are you
changed
talking about-
the policy
about-
that you could change, a consultant said you may not use the money for salary increases. And within a month later, he changed the policy, you could use it for staff.
And we're not doing
salaries.
that.
I know, okay.
We're not doing that.
Okay, so anyway, those are some of the kind of issues at the state level that affect us at this level right here.
Okay, but
that I'm
let's,
concerned about.
Mr. President,
Okay,
let's stick
so
right here
equal-
to our
okay,
school,
okay.
our district. Let's
Okay.
not talk about states.
Well, it affects us.
Okay.
Those statewide policies affect our distribution of money
I
to
get
where it
that.
should be going.
Okay.
Okay.
I get
And
that.
the big question is today, if our, after the Prop 30 thing, are our students of need, high need, getting more funding today than they did when we had 40-plus categorical programs?
We're not
You
talking
know?
about propositions now.
Okay, but
Please.
that's what I'm want to let you know.
Okay.
And so, is it a funding issue? You want
Yes.
to discuss that?
Yeah.
No, but that's not the topic
We're
today.
not talking.
That's not the topic today.
Okay.
Mr. Perez, please.
All right.
We had a lot to cover.
Anyway, okay, so I'm glad that we just approved almost $1 million of computers for our low-income students, but, how are we going to use them in our classroom? Okay, data review. Okay, I think we have the data. It's just a matter of concentrating and supplementing those Title I schools with funding and resources. And again, when you do a report, please put the number on the pages, because it was very hard to go through that. And with 3 pages of notes, it's probably better that I sit down with you and discuss some of these items.
That's a great idea. Never heard that one before.
That was a good one.
And cut short, because I know somebody wants to go home early tonight.
No, nobody going home early.
Yes, okay. Okay. Yeah, okay.
No, we'll be happy somebody can talk to you
Okay.
one-on-one, okay?
All right.
Can we move on now?
All right.
All right, Miss Albiani.
You done?
Yes.
How often do you meet with your Phase 2 group? Monthly. Okay.
Monthly collectively, and then we're doing a lot of work just offline together.
Okay. I think that's great. I think you're also building in the idea that this is important and worth their time. And when someone is very stressed, by making them part of this phase, I think you're showing that you have a place to continue it once we start the work. Like the PLCs, giving the time for those to happen. So I really appreciate that, and I think you're sending the right message that this is important to us, and you can make the time for this, and we will support you and make it worth your time. And that's the valuable. They'll leave if it's worth their time, and I think this is over the top great. So when I was a teacher at a Title I school, I went to the best center and got the best help, and my mantra is silos of excellence. So I'm so excited to see a place that this all comes together. I think I've learned so much about the importance of systematic change and creating sustainable change, which I believe is our goal and is so important to know and is so important to recognize that that's where we're headed. I think you're right. We're trying to think differently, which is great. A friend of mine's trying to help end poverty, childhood poverty, and she talks about poverty fatigue. It's an uphill battle, and I think we're very positive with job satisfaction, but I think there's a true job fatigue because I've been at a Title I school, I've worked at a nonprofit with children who are dying. It just gets hard. So any special things we can do for staff that make them know we recognize how hard they work is always a positive. And I think you've hit on many of very important things: time, fidelity, disconnect, fatigue. And I think you've hit these deep diving into the idea of culture and climate, and I think we all know that they're going to overlap. We're going to see them come up again and again and again. So when we find good answers for these, it will blossom and help in so many areas. I think it's really exciting. And autonomy, I think not knowing you're alone, knowing you know what to do, you know what'll work, and once those rewards start coming in, so many other things will build. So I'm very, very excited. And I know this work will help our Title I, and this is where we're starting, and this is where we have a crisis, and we need to be. But I think once we learn these things, we will be able to continue them to all our schools and just raise the whole ship. So I'm really excited about this work. Look forward to the next, learning more about it in the next few presentations. Thank you for all your hard work.
Ms. Espinoza?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I know that even just to get to this point, there's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into this. The superintendent's been, teasing us along, telling us it's coming. So it's nice to finally get this presentation. As you spoke, what I reflected on is that one of the things I'm most proud of in our district is our commitment to continuous improvement, and you're really putting that into action. So thank you so much for doing that. And you heard a little while before your presentation, we took our lumps, and I see a connection between that and the work that you're doing, and I hope that you will continue to drive home the point to everyone that you involve in your work that we always welcome constructive criticism, that we're not going to shy away from it or get defensive, that we are truly committed to continuously doing a better and better job for the kids that we serve. So thank you so much for being a big part of that.
Mr. Fortuna.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. Can we go to the slide, Title I Task Force gap statement? No, there. Okay. I don't know if I am reading this incorrectly or it is not stated well. But as I read the second bullet, the question that comes to my mind is, what are we going to do with the ineffective administrators, teachers, and staff? Or are you just considering everybody as effective in that statement?
I think we start from the positive and we work toward being more and more effective.
Okay.
One of my comments to that would be is, people are performing to the level that we expect them to perform at this point. So if that's been acceptable performance, then that's on me, and that's on us. And so we have work to do.
Okay. I didn't know what we're going to delve delve into specifically as offshoots, and so I brought the report, which I have looked at in terms of the raw data. And I know with the decision-making model and the changes within the approach, I know that we're going to get really good information as we look at those inputs, outputs, outcomes, in terms of looking at not only the positive, but what can we do differently to get gains. It goes without saying that money and time has been spent in Title I schools for ages. And, you know, I come from a place, and I had this discussion with Chris, and is that money's not the answer. A lot of money goes into the schools. Could we use more money to do more things? Yeah. But to look at money as the answer, I think we come up short in terms of looking at what are the best practices to ensure gain. And I was pleased to hear you, talk about the importance of looking at those inputs so that we can, take a good look at where we're going. I have a load of questions, but I'm not going to bother you with them now. I'm going to wait as things progress. And, I mentioned one time before, and I'm really remiss right now to not think of the title, but I will give it to Chris, because I discussed it at one time. Just, a wonderful book on school climate and culture. And when I had mentioned it, Donna Cherry also discussed it that night. So you probably have already read it, but it really, in terms of school climate and culture, was one of the best things that I've looked at. So I'll just get the name to Chris and just take a look. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Very good report. As you indicated, we got a long way to go. I could sit here till probably midnight too and talk about the Title I's. And along with Mr. Perez, his frustration and my frustration as well, I want to echo that part of his sentiments as well. When I look at the Pbis, the Coalition Recognition tonight, how long have we had PBS?
Six or seven, according to Mr.
Okay, yeah, and I knew that. I just wanted to hear it from you folks. Okay, 6 or 7 years. And to be quite candid, I was kind of disappointed that some of our most challenging schools, more of them wasn't on that list, at least at the, the silver or, the entry level, the C, because it goes hand in hand with a lot of our children in the Title I schools. And I saw Leinbach and David Reese was the two out of the challenging schools that I look at. And when I look at the scores, when I look at the figures and the data of the schools that are struggling, they're not on here at all. And my question is, why weren't they? Why, Mr. Ross's department, do we just really hone in on the administrators, or they need support, that we can get those schools really paying attention to what Pbis is all about? So that's a real concern of mine, for me, that is. Ms. Fortina touched on a little bit about the dollars. I'm with that. I mean, we poured what, $3-4 million into Title I this past year?
The total Title I budget? 16?
6, 7?
16. The
I'm
total.
sorry, yeah, 16 million, and not a lot of good results from that kind of money. Whatever it is, I'm not going to go into that either. So, no, money is not the total solution on that. I look at the Title I's to schools, the challenging ones, their poverty. Parents are not totally engaged for various reasons. Some are working round the clock with medial jobs, trying to take care of their kids. And when we look at, I think Ms. Fortuna brought up about our staff, our teacher burnout or fatigue, as Ms. Albiani indicated. Yeah, it is very challenging there. But if we are going to move to the next level with them, we got to have the right people in there. Number one, if they really don't want to be in Title I schools, they should leave. I know that's a broad statement to make, to look at it. But I have seen Title I schools improve my almost 20 years on this board, and I've seen them go up. The issue is that these folks move on to higher level positions, and guess what happens? Some of those schools deteriorate again. So it tells me that people do count, the leadership counts, if we have the right people involved. I mean, we had a high school that had wonderful recognitions in the Valley region at one time. And why was that? It was the principal, the educators in there that was dedicated, and they moved the notch up, and they were there for a period of time. So it's what some of your phase one that I went through looking at. So for me, it's about people, having the right people to get into school and say, I'm going to roll my sleeves up and we're going to get it done. Will it be easy? No. And there's no silver bullet to a lot of this because the state hasn't found it of what to do as well, too. So I look at all the different programs and the data we have. I think we have the data, the tools out there, but it's going to involve people and the hard calls if people really want to look at these challenging schools. I mean, when you look at the data on some of our challenging Title I elementary schools, you folks see it, I see it, and what's really going on in that school. Suspensions, as I mentioned before, second graders, third graders suspensions, high African American suspensions in those schools. Where's Pbis? That's what I'm trying to grapple with right now to turn around. So, and I don't want to be negative at all, but there's a lot of work to do with people and how we're going to tackle these programs, because the schools that are far below right now, if we move them up 5 to 8%, this district's going to look amazing because we're on the cusp of it right now. And how we're going to do that, it's going to take people, dedicated people. It's been proven it can be done. I've seen it done. Now, having the teachers there, I mean, you got teachers that are in some of our Title I challenging schools, yeah, they're burnt out. They really don't want to be there, but they don't get the lip from the parents because the parents aren't there. They're not like a Adriani that they're hovering over 24 hours a day. Nobody, they don't have a voice. It's going to be our voice that's going to help these schools move forward. So I want to end on that. I appreciate the report, and I'm looking forward to this phase 2. And it's going to take a lot of hard calls to look people in the eye. Do you really want to be there in this school? And I'm looking forward, particularly for Leinbach, improving greatly. It's really, really bad right now. I don't know what's going on over there, but we need to look at, those are all babies that's going to end up in our secondary schools that can't read, and suspensions are there, they fight. But the climate goes back. If you got a good school with that climate going, they love that principal, they can see the results, we'll see improvements. Thank you for your report.
Did you do anything on early childhood development? Requests that would affect the outcomes?
Have we?
Research that.
As part of the, yes, because we have Title I, we have preschools in our Title I schools.
Right.
So they've been
Like
included
possible
in the
universal
examination.
And that good outcomes?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well,
We researched
as a
the
res-
impact of early childhood education programs, and since we have some in our, that's why we included that level of instruction, if you will, because we have preschools in our Title I.
Right.
We're going to
So-
end on that. You get some information
All
on
right.
that. That's not on the subject,
All
okay?
right.
Let's move on. Thank you very much for your report. Okay, public hearing to call on Mr. Riley. Notification of United School District ATU bargaining.
Good evening again, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, Ms. Avalos. Pursuant to Government Code Section 3547, the following are stipulated for negotiations between a bargaining unit and the school district. The district's initial proposal is officially presented at a public meeting of the governing board for public notice, and a public hearing is conducted to receive public input regarding the district's initial proposal. EGUSD's initial proposal is attached. It's recommended that after the closure of the public hearing, the board take action to approve the district's initial proposal to ATU.
Okay, I'll open up to a public hearing to receive public input. Seeing none, I'll close it, and I'll call for a motion.
I have a question. I noticed these proposals are now, you have local control funding formula and local control accountability. Why do you have that language in these proposals or initials?
We just want to emphasize the fact that the district has a number of financial commitments, and we think it's important to frame those financial commitments when we're talking about potentially total compensation, salary, and benefits.
How come you didn't put general fund?
Well, that's part of it, but we have to meet the LCFF state requirements as they pertain to supplemental concentration funding. We also have to keep up with increasing the rising costs of operations. We have commitments to Egbert. We have to maintain a budget of positive certification. So we outline all of those commitments in our proposals.
So we're using local control funding from LCAP to support this program, this unit?
No.
Transportation, what?
Well,
No.
LCFF is our total funding.
Right.
That's all of it. That's where our funding comes from. Now, we do get some transportation dollars as well, but we don't get enough transportation dollars from the state to cover our costs for transportation. So there is an encroachment
What about
in
the
the general
general
fund.
You asked this
The
question
LCFF
all
is
the
the
time.
general
That's
fund.
the general fund.
That is the general fund.
You're saying our budget, well, I've seen some other parts of our budget, it's coming from the general fund.
Most of it.
And you have.
LCFF is it encompasses the general fund.
We have a budget presentation, Mr. Perez.
Okay, so
let's-
anyway, okay.
Yeah, we got to get through
Here's another
this.
question I have regarding this document. Why did you have to mention Egbert, E-G-B-E-R-T, updates, and the Janus report?
It's a cost that we can't ignore.
Cost?
And we have annual district payments to Egbert that we have to continue to honor, so that's why we delineate. And it's a benefit to our employees as well, so we delineate that in our.
So they have interest also, that's what it says here.
For sure.
The district has an interest in modifying, updating contracts, but also Egbert also, correct? And all these other entities?
Yes.
These are the things we're going to talk about. This is just outlining what the framework of the conversations can be. If you don't have it outlined here, you can't talk. That's the idea of it being a sunshine proposal. This allows us to outline. We're telling the public what it is that we're going to talk about in negotiations, because negotiations aren't public. But before we go into negotiations, we tell the public what are the topics that we're going to talk about? That's what this document is for.
But you only mentioned one of our bargaining units. I was wondering why.
Because
you
we
didn't
bring one
mention-
for each of our units.
What?
We do these almost every meeting. We bring one for each of our different units. This is
Right.
just for one of our units.
I know that.
We already
but
did this for EGA, we did this for CSEA, we did it for AFSCME,
Right.
we've done it for PSWA.
Right.
We've done it for each,
I was wondering why you didn't include those other bargaining units in this
they
language.
each come individually.
Right.
We've already done those.
I know we've done those.
ATU kind of sets the time frame of when they want to sunshine. The unit is responsible for starting this process.
Right.
ATU is usually the last one to, traditionally, is the last one to start the process. We've
Right.
done all the others already. You've approved them all.
Right.
Mr. President, these are the kinds of questions we've all committed to asking in advance of the hearing, so I'd just like to
Yeah.
adhere to
Yeah.
that.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and have a motion at this time.
So moved.
So move. Second.
It's been moved and second that we accept Elk Grove Unified Schools District initial proposal to ATU for the 2019-20 school year. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pierce and Dr. Grewal, on the calendar conversion recommendation.
Good evening again. Mr. Pierce and I have already shared this PowerPoint with you in August, but we're going to go over just a few updates with you in terms of numbers and give you the feedback that we received from Kennedy Elementary. Let's keep going. That's what our configuration was in 18-19. We had 14 schools on traditional, 15 on multi-track year-round, and 13 on modified. And then 19-20, 13, 17, and 12.
And I certainly don't want to belabor this point. We talked about these in detail at the last board meeting. Just want to touch on a couple, though, to remind the board, and you'll see this on kind of our on the radar list, but Arnold Adriani is one of those schools. Helen Carr Costello may be one of those schools, depending on our ability to build a new school in the southern boundary of our district. Elk Grove Elementary is going to remain a school that's on our boundary, on our radar, as well, naturally, Franklin Elementary School, again, depending on our ability to build a new school in the southwest portion of our district. I did want to share with the board that at the last meeting you requested that we include offloads and intras on this slide. It was not included previously, but it kind of gives you a bigger picture of what's going on at each of those schools. To that point and to that question, if you look at Arnold Adriani, for instance, one of the things that we would look at in the future if that school doesn't become year-round is whether or not it can support 85 intra transfers into the school. So it's a great question. It's information that we'll look at moving forward. Going to modified traditional schools, again, schools that will be on the radar and you'll see coming in future years. Raymond Case Elementary, again, you can see a number of intras that are coming into Raymond Case, so we would look at whether or not we could support that, perhaps in lieu of going year-round. Roy Herberger is one of the schools on the watch list, and of course, as you know, Samuel Kennedy at nearly 1,100 kids this year is a school that we want to look at, and we would like to request that we convert that school to a multi-track year-round calendar. In terms of the multi-track year-round schools, the board did have some questions. We shared that in a board communication with you about how we assess those capacities and those projections and why we're not recommending that any of these schools come off of year-round. But again, Ms. Graywall and I are committed to continuing looking at those schools and bringing those forward to you in the future. In this case, it's Edna Beatty, Donner, and Folks Ranch. And then on this slide, it pertains to David Reese, Joseph Sims, Stone Lake, and then naturally you can see what's happening at Zender Ranch, and that is the boundary that we need the new school built in order to keep Franklin and Helen Carr Costello on their current calendar.
So these are the considerations when we're changing a school calendar in general. We just look at the total number of students on the campus, how it affects the families and the communities. Does it affect them going into middle and high school? Not really. Just they may have they have a shorter summer break there. We consider the importance of students attending their home school, the teacher planning time, the regional articulation for the principals, and the enrollment capacity. More specific to year-round, again, we have less students on campus at the same time. Yes, it does cause some disruption in the beginning. We talked about the impact to middle and high school, and it's important that we allow our students to attend their resident schools, and it increases the enrollment capacity. So we had a number of meetings at Samuel Kennedy Elementary School. We had a Title I meeting, we had a back-to-school night meeting, we had a community meeting on August 29th. We had parent input forms sent home with all the students. We had translators. We had the PowerPoint put on the Facebook website for Kennedy Elementary. We had another community meeting on September 5th. And so with that, we had 87 responses, and you can see 13 are in agreement, 32 disagree, and 42 were neutral. And then the staff input, we had a number of meetings there as well to get staff input. 3 were in agreement, 20 were in disagreement, and 4 were neutral. But please note that there are 94 staff members at Kennedy Elementary, and we had a response for 27. So we are making a recommendation to transition Kennedy to a multi-track year-round school. These are the schools we continue to have on our radar. And that'll make for 2021, 13 schools on traditional, 18 on multi-track year-round, and 11 on modified traditional. We're staying with our timeline as if we get approval to move forward. In October, we will go back out to the site and communicate to the staff and to the community.
Okay. Any question from, go ahead, Mr. Machina?
Yeah, you know what, I don't have specific questions to the report, but an associated question. As we look at what's occurring in some of the schools that we will take a look at down the road, depending upon whether or not we can build new schools. So the question is related there. What are the current capacity targets that we are utilizing for the construction of new elementary, middle, and high schools?
So in our master plan, we had an optimal school site capacity of 850 students.
Elementary?
Yes.
Okay.
We also have in there verbiage about continuing to use multi-track year-round as a tool to accommodate growth. So both avenues are there.
And what about middle and high school? Do we have targets?
I'll make a mistake with regard to middle school.
I won't hold you to it.
I want to say 1,500 off the top of my head, and high school's 2,200.
What did you say in the middle school?
1,500.
Approximately.
Approximately, yeah.
Yeah.
The capacity on it?
Yes.
Okay. I know high school's 22. I wanted to say 1,200, but maybe I'm wrong.
It very well might.
Yeah,
Middle
I
school's
mean,
the one I'm a little
I was
shaky
like
on.
shocked at the 1,500.
Yeah, I think it's 1,200.
Maybe 1,200.
Yeah,
I'd have to
1,200
refer
Middle schools
back to
can't
the-
hold 1,500 for the most part, I mean. I know
Yeah,
we got some.
that number may be high. I can't recall off the
it's
top of my
12,
head. I
I believe.
apologize.
Better start adding more vice
Yeah,
principals.
it's 12. Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Espinoza?
So I'm going to table the question I was planning to ask because I'm more interested in Carmen's question. Why do we target our future elementary schools at a capacity of 850 students, knowing we're opening a lot of them in areas that are impacted? Should we not be setting a higher target, or why not shoot higher?
That's really a discretion of the board. We have those targets just in terms of our planning. So as we look at schools and the need to build future schools, it's purely a planning number. I think you can see from the capacities, the number becomes what the number needs to be in the long term. And obviously, all of our existing schools, they are what they are. But moving forward, that number is subject to change, though. That's at the discretion of the board. And that was just something that was utilized in our master plan.
Another reality of that is schools and neighborhoods will go through cycles.
Right.
So one of the pieces is having the 850 capacity and the multi-track year-round tool allows us to go bigger, but then as that neighborhood then comes back to what is a more normal neighborhood as attrition and the families get older, then you don't have a school too big for the area. So the 850 is a really solid number of what we would like them all to be if there was kind of an ideal situation. But the multi-track year-round allows us to expand them and then also bring them back to the normal size when appropriate, without having to be over-schooled. Down the road, that will happen. And if we leave the right footprint for the board that's here long after I'm gone and probably long after everyone else is gone, we won't have schools of 250, 300 kids that you see in a lot of our surrounding districts as they aged out. So I do think the planning helps with that model. And the multi-track year-round gives us the flexibility to stretch when we need to stretch, and then we can come back to where we need to at the right time.
And it's somewhat anecdotal, but there is a sweet spot, so to speak, with regard to the size of schools. There's economy of scale. There is just the reality of how many students can you effectively accommodate at any one time. I didn't want to get too far in the weeds in the answer, but the state has recommendations on elementary acreage, and if you exceed that, they don't fund the difference. They have standards with regard to multipurpose room size, on and on and on, library size, playground size, all those types of things. So you try to build around that as best you can, so that you're not having to supplement above and beyond what the state minimum funding would be. So it's all those things play into it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other
You
questions?
mentioned 850 per elementary, and how many classrooms per elementary in class size?
So our class size is, there's a couple things to that. One, it's negotiated.
No, I mean, physical size?
Oh, physical size? Generally speaking, 960 square feet.
How many classes within that?
About 30.
30 classes? No, then, okay. Then most of our schools or elementaries within have portables, correct?
Uh-huh.
Get back to Anthony. You think the community is receptive for going the year-round?
So we can certainly go back to those slides.
They just went through
A
the
couple of things that I would want to share. In the case of the parent input, again, Ms. Graywall spoke to this. The majority of the people who did give us a written response were neutral. There certainly are those who disagree. For what it's worth, I want to share that when we converted Kennedy from a multi-track year-round calendar to the modified traditional calendar, I think the results were about the same. And I don't want to dismiss the feedback, but my point is change is always difficult. People don't appreciate change. It does affect you. So this isn't out of the ordinary of what we experienced then. I didn't suspect a whole lot different now. And for the board, just to be aware, Kennedy has been on a multi-track year-round calendar since 1996 with this interim stint of the last several years where we did convert them, and we shared this with them as a result of budget cuts. So that was a point in time where it was literally so dire that we looked at every elementary school that had the physical capacity to accommodate all of their students without regard to the impact that was going to have of having 1,000 students at a time. And Mr. Madison will remember how dire the cuts were.
Vividly.
We converted 24 schools, and it was not fun. But this was the same type of feedback that we received then as well. I just want to share that.
Again, I look at our reports and our surveys, if you did data research, you have to have X amount of people responding to a study or research or the survey to make them worthwhile.
But relatively small numbers, to make them significantly, to make the numbers significant, we always want actually above what makes the numbers statistically, I have my friggin' braces in, so I can't talk, statistically significant, I can say that quickly, is a relatively low number, but we always shoot for much more than that. So but that's a constant conversation we have with regards to data.
And just keep in mind what Superintendent alluded to earlier, we don't want to be in a position like some districts where you got a elementary school with 250 kids in there. So I think we're managing our facilities properly, and to be quite frank, I think Kennedy is overdue. I mean, should have been done a couple of years ago, in my opinion, but that's another, yeah.
Just a quick question. I was just wondering if you can refresh my memory. Once we transition them over, the timeline, they'll be consistent with this? Like, we won't have another transition back for a while, is the hope, or for a couple years at least? How many normally, like?
Our typical, when we converted all these schools off, we made a promise, if you will, for 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
In this case, we didn't do that, but what I would say to your question is we never want to haphazardly do this because we understand the impact it has on parents, families, and staff. So you won't be hearing from us anytime in the next several years of wanting to convert Kennedy back to a non-year-round calendar.
Okay. And then also, how is receptive or is staff now? Is for the most part, are most of them on board? Just wondering as well, with the parents.
This was the staff input.
The staff input, 94, and then 20 were disagreeing. Some of the concerns, well, one of the things that they had requested is that the boundaries would change and that the students would end up going to Reese. But Reese is already a year-round school, so that wouldn't be a solution. The other things, they're starting to think about how to make it work in terms of movement and logistics and supplies and that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
You want to recognize?
Yeah, I want to recognize the principal back there. If you want to go up and say a comment about since you're here, I don't want to put you on the spot.
All night.
But you're the leadership over there.
Good evening, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. I'd like to introduce my vice principal, Antonia Slagle, who's also joining us tonight. We are both new to Kennedy Elementary School. We both started there July 1 and want to thank you for that opportunity. We have received a great deal of support from Dr. Graywall, Mr. Pierce, and also Dr. Kevel. We've held 2 community meetings. We had 80 parents at the first one and about 60 at the second one. Under the direction of Dr. Kevel, we got some responses from our parents that they wanted just an opportunity to, have questions answered, and I want to thank the elementary ed department for coming out and supporting us with that. Kennedy is a wonderful school. It's very unique, and over half of the staff, I want to say, have been there for 20 plus years.
Yes.
They love Kennedy, and they've loved being on a modified traditional calendar for the last 10 years. They were, if you'll note, the 20 there are probably the veterans, so I just want to shout that out there. But they understand that for the safety of our students, we serve 450 students at our breakfast every morning. My vice principal's there at 6:45. The first bus arrives at 7 o'clock. We feed them, and they're in classrooms by 8 o'clock. So the staff understands that it takes a village, but it takes more than a village at Kennedy Elementary School to service our students. We love them. We're grateful for the opportunity to have to serve them, but we understand that there's a need for this change in the calendar, and we hope that the board will support us in this decision.
Well, we appreciate that. And Ms. Brown, she's been around in many of the Title I schools and the year-round, so you're very good at it, and I'm sure you'll lead them on. Change is very difficult for senior employees, I should say. We were all somewhat resistant, but I can tell you, my experience on this board, that they get to the year-round, they don't want to go back to traditional. So hopefully it'll do well, and it'll help the academics as well over there.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, we'll call for a motion.
Mr. Madison, I just didn't want to be remiss. Maggie Ellis joined us at the second staff meeting, and I want to thank her for her support. She was great in giving teachers feedback and options that they have available to them. So it was great to have her there, and I didn't want to be remiss in not thanking
I
her.
appreciate that. If anybody can speak on year-round is Ms. Ellis. Maggie's been around a lot of year-round schools, so. Okay, with that, we'll call for a motion to approve the Samuel Jackman Elementary School from modified to tradition to a multi-track.
Kennedy, you said Jackman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kennedy. I got Jack.
We did have
Samuel
year-round
Kennedy.
secondary
They're
schools
close,
at one point.
yeah. From modified tradition to multi-track year-round calendar effective 2020-21.
So moved.
Then second by Ms. Perez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Shannon Hayes on a budget update.
Fun time.
Good evening, President Madison, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. Tonight, I bring you the 2018-19 unaudited actuals. And I will say that this was a challenge this year to close our books, but it was a challenge that I myself and staff was up for. So this is my favorite time to make sure that my budgeting is sound and makes sense, and we don't have anything weird going on, and we don't. So I guess maybe on that note, it's kind of boring, but still good stuff. We'll take boring, yes, we'll take boring. So no big surprises or anything like that, so that was good to know. So tonight, we're gonna look at the unaudited actual revenues and expenditure charts. We'll look at the education protection account, changes from estimated actuals to our unaudited actuals, and then a brief budget update, and then next steps. So looking at our total general fund, so this is both restricted and unrestricted, 49% of our revenues come from state aid, 15% come from EPA, and the other 18% come from property taxes. We do receive a small amount for federal state categorical programs of 13%, lottery is 2%, and local and other is 3%. For this presentation, we do exclude the STRS and PERS on behalf calculations that we recognize on our books, and that is the liability of our staff on those retirement. So that doesn't skew all of our data. Looking again at the total general fund, these are where our monies go. 86% goes to salaries and benefits. 4% goes to books and supplies, 9% to operating, and another 1% to capital outlay and other costs. Looking at expenditures by function, 65% of our expenditures are direct instruction related, or excuse me, direct instruction. Instruction-related services is 11%, pupil services 10%, general administration is 5%, plant services 8%, and other outgo is 1%. Then looking at expenditures by fund, last year as we closed, we spent as a district $806 million. 691.7 was from the general fund. Charter schools was 2.3 million, adult ed 5.3 million, child development 6.7, cafeteria 26.2, and facilities, including Measure M, was 74.5 million. As part of our education protection account, we have to ensure that we spend, in this case it was $101 million, on instruction and instruction-related expenditures. We use grades TK through 4 teacher salaries and benefits to satisfy that. And for fiscal year, again, it was $101.4 million. And then looking at where we were for 18-19 school year, we adopted our budget deficit spending $4,500, it's hard to say thousand, $4,566, and that was due to one-time expenditures that are in the budget. As you guys approved the 45-day revise, we brought our fund balance forward. We designated carryover reserves, so we were deficit spending again with additional one-time costs of $7.6 million. When we came into first interim, the $11 million that's in column 2 for carryovers was moved up above the line, above the surplus deficit, which increased our deficit spending 22.9. Second interim, we were at $20.9 million, and those were adjustments that we made to our budget going forward when we shore up salaries and benefits. Our projected year end, we thought we would be deficit spending 18.7. and we actually ended up deficit spending 3.4. So we have a total change to our fund balance as we changed fiscal periods of an additional $15.4 million to our bottom line. Then reconciling between our estimated actuals and where we actually landed at the end of June. For 2018-19 revenues, we ended up with an additional $2.4 million in revenue we did not anticipate. That was due to a cohort of TK students that are moving through our system. They have left the TK3 arena and they are now in grades 4 through 6, and that is a different rate per ADA funding that we receive. So we are actually being paid on a prior year for those children than current year. So the way LCFF works is you get paid on the greater of prior year or current. So this is one-time money for LCFF purposes of $2.4 million. The other revenue changes, we had state revenue and interest. That was primarily lottery and interest revenue we received from having cash in bank. We had additional, actually we had less contributions that we sent over to RRM and special education of $600,000. Then expenditure variances, the balance of salaries and benefits that were left on the table at the end of the year was $2.9 million. We have summer school, our summer school runs from June of the prior year through May of the next year. That was $2.4 million, and that's carryover by design. We have the balance of our approved funding priorities and our LCAP. We traditionally have had monies on the table just by the nature of how our programs run. And then we have a balance from technology, utility, and supplies of $4.9 million. Then with our utility costs, our services and indirect, we actually overspent $2.1. So our net change was a balance of $11.2 million in expenditures. That plus our revenues from above ended up with a net change of an additional $15.4 million to our fund balance, which is roughly 2.07% of our total budget. Then as we move forward, we're recommending that we carry over certain components of that $15.4 million. One of those is the van pool reserve. As transportation charges for outside field trips, we build up a reserve to replace vans in our van pool. We have the site shared energy savings, which is part of our energy conservation. We reserve $100,000 for those school sites that actually save energy from the prior year. Summer school extended day and intercession, this will be to run program through May of 20 of $2.4 million. Our approved funding priorities and those items that were built into our LCAP, we're requesting $3.2 million to continue those. Technology utility, we're requesting $4.5 million, and then in order to honor purchases that were in the pipeline when we close the fiscal year, we're requesting another $200,000 to honor those arrangements so school sites don't start their school year in the hole. That would, that's a total of $10.5 million that would be rebudgeted on a one-time basis for the school year 1920, leaving an adjusted reserve for future funding priorities of an increase of $4.9 million. Then looking at our multi-year projection, we had come to you and had put into our budget additional revenue for the special education students that are 3 and 4 years old that are not part of TK. That value is $5 million. When we presented this to you for 45-day revise, we had budgeted this amount as ongoing in fiscal year 20, 21, and 21, 22. We have since learned that through trailer bill language that money is going to become one-time in nature. So we have pulled that out and we highlighted for you to show that it is one-time, which doesn't change the surplus deficit in the first year of a negative $6.6 million, but it did drop your 2021 and 21-22 surplus down to 2.2 and 6.9. So as a 45-day revise, this revision, this is where we are. Bringing forward our adjusted ending fund balance, we're adding $4.5 million to the reserve for funding priorities. And you can see there's been no change then to 2021 or 21-22. We will be bringing back through first interim the rest of the changes as we designate those carryovers, assuming the board takes action tonight. Then looking forward, we do have 1920 one-time approved funding priorities that are existing in our 1920 budget to the tune of $6.6 million. And we have a number of negotiated items that we'll be negotiating with our different units of $2.7 million. And And then looking forward, in December, I'll be bringing you the first interim report. We'll also be bringing you the 2018-19 auditor's report. Then we'll be looking forward to January for the 2021 governor's budget proposal. And then our second interim report will be brought to you in March. And with that, I'll take questions and ask for approval of our 2018-19 unaudited.
Okay, Mr. Virginia? I have none. Any questions down?
Yeah, page 12, you have transportation floor in high school. I studied transportation issues regarding, if you have transportation issues, you have better ADA. So why isn't that yellow? You haven't approved it? Okay. You need a study or what? Are we doing a study?
No.
We will have data related to that item, yes.
Okay, with that, I'll have a motion.
I move approval of the 2019-20 budget. Well, I guess it's everything, the 2018-19 audited.
Unaudited actual.
Unaudited actual.
And expenditure.
And to approve the 18-19 unaudited actual income and expenditures.
I'll second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Seeing none? It's approved.
I checked.
Yeah. Okay, I guess you're still up. We'll look at the readopting the resolution increasing the GAN limit, okay?
Tonight, I ask the board to adopt attached resolution number 21, which recalculates and increases the 2018-19 GAN limit to $475,170,333.59 and establishes the 19-20 estimated GAN limit at $495,290,209.68.
Okay, I'll call for a motion.
Second.
Been moved in second that we adopt resolution 21, which recalculates and increases the 2018-19 GAN limit to $475 million and then establishes the 2018-19 estimate GAN limit to $495,290,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. Call a nomination of CSBA Director at Large, American Indian.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Crystal Martinez-Alaire.
I second. Does she accept?
No?
Yeah. Continue serving in her capacity as
appreciate the
CSBA Director at
nomination.
Large.
I think she said she accepted the nomination. I don't know if we have to
She's
call
been
her.
a pretty significant contributor. I'm speaking, thank you. She's been a significant contributor to CSBA leadership already. So I'd love to see her continue in that capacity.
Okay, I had a nomination on that.
Hold on, I don't have a statement. Yes, I have great things about Miss Dr. Martinez on that committee, and she's been doing a great job, even all the way to the Capitol.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a motion?
Bobby moved it, I
Bobby
seconded.
Seconded. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I like-
Motion carried.
I like to abstain, sorry.
You may. Okay, board members' reports, committees. Mr. Fortuna.
Yeah, I have two. Bobby mentioned briefly on another topic, but we held 2x2 with the city of Elk Grove, and that was my first 2x2 with Elk Grove, and I have to say that as a city, they are incredibly positive in their relationships with our staff and are open to recommendations. It was a super experience. Then secondly, had Sheldon High School Ag Advisory Board meeting. There are two new teachers in Sheldon Ag, Chelsea Snyder and Alexis Hong. And I believe Sheldon Ag is going to see some positive changes with the two of them. They are highly energized. They want to develop new programs and grow the existing program and to increase the opportunities for students. One of the things they're looking at is applying for a Proposition 51 grant with support from our office, because Sheldon High School is unable to teach its new curriculum that it would like to teach, and has difficulty with the current curriculum because of the inadequacy of their facilities. And it is an equity issue, and it's going to be brought forth as an equity issue. As you look at Florin, PG, and EG, there's no comparison in their facilities and their ability to meet the needs of students because of those facilities. And so Sheldon is going to move forward with that Proposition 51 grant, and is currently getting letters of support from industry. So both meetings were very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Singh-Allen?
I can just add a little bit to the Elk Grove City 2x2. I'll just go over the agenda items. We discussed noise at some of our EGUSD sports facilities, particularly on weekends, which is being addressed. Parking, traffic circulation around school sites. The new police chief reaffirmed our SRO commitment, so that was great. Some discussion on the free student transit program out of Sacramento and whether or not we were going to be participating in that. Right now, it's really a wait and see how successful that is or isn't before the city will move forward. And then just a preliminary discussion on a future elementary site in the Southeast Policy area. Those were the agenda items.
Okay, thank you. All righty. With that, we'll go, Superintendent.
No problem at all. So I do want to do a reminder that this weekend, the 22nd, we are doing the Pinkerton in the Park picnic, and they're actually honoring Elk Grove Unified this year. So just as a reminder, 12:30 to 3. I'll be there, so if anybody else wants to join me, you are more than welcome.
I'll be there.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, other items on the floor. Mr. Fortuna.
Yeah, I need to put my 2 cents in on the subject, Chet. There's been some discussion in some sections with respect to the lockdown that had occurred several weeks ago at Laguna High School. And some of the discussion has centered around that I have heard the delays in parents being notified. And, you know, I got to say hogwash. I was at Laguna during the lockdown. The lockdown was for 15 minutes. When we were released, I came out. There was easily over 100 parents already in the office and outside the office. So I don't know the definition people give to the word delay. But boy, I sure did not experience it. And I need to say that the Laguna staff, our security people, directors, EG Police, County Sheriff's Department, were all on top of it. They were there. And I happened to be in a classroom when the lockdown occurred. And giving credit to not only our teachers, but our students. When lockdown occurred, the students knew what they needed to do. They didn't need to be told. And it was perfectly still and quiet until campus supervisors came around to give the all clear. So kudos to all the staff, all the agencies involved. And I don't know how much quicker parent notification could have been given.
That's good. Thank you for that comment, because our schools they do a good job all around, so I appreciate that. Any other?
Hey, regarding,
Hold on, Mrs. Martinez, or?
I just had a reminder item from the floor. It's going to be the 52nd Annual California Native American Day at the west steps of the state capitol, and it'll be on September 27th from 10 to 2 p.m. And Governor Gavin Newsom's on the agenda. I'm not sure if he'll be there present to speak, but he was invited, and also Assembly Member James Ramos. And so they'll have different elected officials during that time frame, and that's when the publication, I believe a press release is going out on the publication on Native American student suspension rates. For that committee, I've been working with, helped to co-author that article. And so I believe the LA Times is picking it up as well. So just as soon as I get the final publication, we have the draft going, I'll be forwarding that information to you, Superintendent, so we can share with other board members too. All right.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to add to that. Assemblyman Ramos is the first elected Native American to Assembly. And he'd be a good resource to our community and to educational issues. Also, regarding this incident at the school, I think we need to sit down with, maybe not sit down, or have some outreach, community outreach at the variety of high schools to tell the public what's the process. You know, apparently these people don't know the process, what we go through. Maybe we need to go to these high schools and do workshops, say, hey, you want to know the procedures that what we do, and the role of our police officers, our community patrol, and a variety of resources, who gets involved. Apparently these people do not know the protocol. It's more not knowing the protocol and what I've seen of it, because, you know, right now the people there's a lot of fear out there, you know, and we need to go out there and maybe do workshops at a variety of schools or high schools to, you know, relieve this fear and anxiety that our parents, I mean, these our community has out there at all levels. You know, it's not just our schools, it's, you know, it's the community in general. You know, you see these mass shootings throughout the world.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we've talked about that, Superintendent and I, and that's to come forward too, where we have our safety department even brief the public at a formal board meeting.
Right,
too.
you know.
Look at that, okay? Okay, I just have a few items. I had Superintendent and I, we were at the HBCU fair this past Saturday at Monterey Trail, and it was very well attended. One of the largest I've seen. So kudos go out to that Monterey Trail hosting it, and some of you folks should have seen it. It was really nice. Also, my esteemed colleague sitting to my right here, she volunteered me for a CSBA committee on the growth model of schools. I appreciate that.
I was right, you were perfect for it.
Yeah, and I served on the PSAA committee, which was it was quite long, and we developed a dashboard on that. So it was very interesting. Currently, California is one of the only 2 states without a growth model. I didn't realize that until I was on that committee. And it's going to go right along with our dashboard. The achievement gap is that we got to find a way that are going to attract kids, and California's got to come up a way on it. So I hope our curriculum department, we're on top of a lot of this. You probably heard of it, what's going on. And they asked, I don't know, it was maybe 12 of us school board members from around California that we convened last week, or I can't remember, a couple weeks ago. And so we were there a couple of hours. So it was quite interesting to see how they're formulating a growth model for every district. So you're going to hear more about that this coming, more workload. Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 21:20 hours. Thank you.